Okay, testing 1 2, coming in hot, landing on in. Holla if you hear me. See if the crew here. Let's see, we got Karen, Anthony. Yeah, big PP stuff today. Let me see. What the fuck? Let's crack Anthony. Karen M having a shitty day. Well, shit. Try and turn that around then. Cause I got something for y'all today. Ooh, Lord. Yeah, I got something for y'all stanky asses. Me and the superstar. The one and only thug. Baby Yoda. Shit, man. What happened, Karen? How'd they try to tear you down this time? The bastards. The fucking bastards. It's okay. We're gonna look into the heart of the bastards, or at least one of the bastards. That's right. Today. Hold on. Today we're gonna look into the heart of capitalism. Let me see. That's right, gang in the spot. Propaganda, fuck yeah. It's going Super Saiyan high. Kamehamehas and whatnot. All that shit, yeah. The neighbors are trapping your raccoons, Karen. Fucking bullshit. That's not illegal to trap another woman's raccoons. This is an outrage. Well, shit. Have you tried karate chopping your neighbors? Or better yet, teaching the raccoons to karate chop? Alright. If that doesn't work, I don't know. Just take them to court. Trial by combat. And that's all I got. But today, I can give you advice on capitalism. Because by the end of the day, we're going to be masters of not only communism, which we mastered yesterday, if you were with me, which you guys were, most of you. But today we're going to master the yin to that yang. The other side of that coin, the capitalism. Yeah, that's right. I'm smoked out for today's stream too, so it's going to be crazy as shit. Oh yeah. All right, let's get this. Let's do it. Rambling. Me oh my. So right off the bat, just beautiful capitalism just spilling and just seeping from this fucking video. That they want to give credit to everyone who worked on it just right off the bat before you even know what the fucking video is about. You know, you can tell these guys are true red-blooded American green-eyed vulture capitalists. So I just want to, that doesn't go unnoticed. It doesn't. Baby Yoda, he notices it, and I appreciate it. Yeah, fuck yeah. So I don't know who the fuck this guy is. He's just a random capitalist that that kind of came up when I typed in capitalism saves lives in YouTube. But yeah, we have Thomas J. DiLorenzo, and you know, he looks like we're gonna find out what he has to know. If you guys are down. Yeah, and Anthony's everyone's favorite coon. You know, where I'm come from, we just shorten it. We get You know, we're a nicknaming type of town where I'm from, so we just shorten that down. Anthony is everyone's favorite coon. Yeah, I was just joking, Karen. I know you didn't mean to say coon. I just did it to be fucking weird and mean. Let me see. Oh, propaganda! You're gonna jam out to Happy Worker Ants? By all means, man. Pull up another window and put that in the background of this jack off. Let him talk for a sec. Oh, video has no sound? Yeah, hold on. I got a idea why that is. Probably because the desktop audio is off.
Very beginning of the American Republic, an expression of the so-called free rider problem was enunciated by none other than Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, who made the case that in order to build roads and canals, private capital would never be sufficient for that. And so he was the first champion of what we today would call pork barrel spending. They had to put a picture of Hamilton instead of having his picture on the currency. His picture should be on every one of those orange cones on the interstate that you pass. That's really a much more important part of his legacy. So this was part of the real big economic policy debate of the early 19th century, where you had all the statists lined up, people like Hamilton and his followers, and then there was great opposition. From Jefferson to Madison to Monroe to Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson said one of the greatest achievements of his presidency was vetoing pork barrel spending programs that were called internal improvements. But the governments finally did get around to that. State and local governments finally did get around to spending a good bit of money on road and canal building. And it was an unmitigated disaster in almost every instance. And to give you one example, there's a historian named John Bach McMaster who wrote a book about this. And he said that in every state which had gone this recklessly into internal improvements in the early 19th century, the financial situation was alarming. No works were finished. Nothing was finished in any state. Little or no income was derived from them. Interest on the bonds increased day by day, and no means of paying it, save by taxation, remained. It was such a debacle in state after state after state that by the time you get to 1850, every state except Massachusetts had amended its constitution to make it illegal for tax dollars to go to any corporation for any reason whatsoever. But it was primarily the road building and canal building subsidies that today we would call this stimulus spending. But it was such a catastrophe, they didn't just pass laws, they amended their constitutions to make it even more difficult to bring back this thing. And it was quite the catastrophe all around the country. And here's one example. As Doug mentioned, I've written a couple of books on Lincoln, and he was the Illinois champion of this. This was part of the Whig Party agenda. And he was very instrumental in getting about $12 million from the state legislature in Illinois in 1837 to start building roads and canals all across the state. And here's what his law partner, William Herndon, said about it. The gigantic and stupendous operations of the scheme dazzled the eyes of nearly everybody, but in the end it rolled up a debt so enormous as to impede the otherwise marvelous progress of Illinois. The burdens imposed by the legislature under the guise of improvements became so monumental in size, it is little wonder that intervals for years after the monster of debt repudiation often showed its hideous face above the waves of popular indignation. And this is Lincoln's law partner, William Herndon, saying this. So it was a disaster for the people of Illinois, like every other state. But in the meantime, the private sector was quietly going along, building roads and canals, and doing it profitably and successfully and efficiently. There's an economist named Daniel Klein who wrote an article some years ago in an economic journal about what happened in the first several decades of the 19th century with private sector road building. So we had this disaster with the government road and canal building everywhere. And here's what he says. The private road building movement built new roads at rates previously unheard of. Over 11 million was invested in turnpikes in New York, 6.5 million in New England, over 4.5 million in Pennsylvania between 1794 and 1840. There were 238 private New England turnpike companies alone that built and operated 3,700 miles of road. New York led all states. New Jersey companies operated 500 miles by the year 1821. Then between 1810 and 1845, over 400 private turnpikes were chartered and built. And so from the very beginning of the Republic, you had this myth all of a sudden that the private sector cannot build roads. The government must take it over. Exactly the opposite of what actually happened. The private sector actually produced. It actually built the roads and did a very good job of it. And the government sector made a big mess of everything it touched. Whenever, even the Erie Canal, the famous Erie Canal, that was profitable, did make money for many years. But of course, who can't make money when the taxpayers are coerced to pay all your infrastructure spending and all your capital expenses? And so the defenders of this, even to this day in the academic world, point to the fact that it made money. In one of my academic papers that I'm working on now, I point out what seemed to me to be the obvious fact is that it was built at around the same time where railroads were coming into being. And one of the arguments that modern economists make about why the market fails is they say it's sometimes in the marketplace inferior technology is locked in by the free market for whatever reason, and we're all forced to suffer for decades with this inferior technology. Well, think about this, the Erie Canal, how to transport goods from the Midwest to the New York area. You put your grain on a barge and you have donkeys drag it through a ditch across the state of New York. At the same time, they're building railroads. Okay, so what was locked in was the donkey dragging barges, when at the same time we had railroads. And of course, eventually the railroads superseded the Erie Canal. But that's another example of how even modern economists who study the history, American economic history, seems to me have it backwards again, where they praise the Erie Canal for being a marvelous success, when in fact it did lock in an inferior technology, donkey-driven barge dragging, compared to the locomotive that was being used. And they unfairly competed with the locomotives in New York State at the time also. And so another example of this is the building of the transcontinental railroads that I've written about.
So propaganda, so far we got, I know he's talking about how all these private highways were actually superior to the public ones or whatever. So he's like praising the private sector. And propaganda over here says that the best highways are public. All of the national park highways are public. Like at the Alaskan highway made between the Canadian and USA government, the USA government. So, like, I imagine they were trying to build a superhighway going between Canada, the United States, that went all the way into Mexico. And if that was to be made, that would certainly be like a government job. The government would certainly have to, approve it. at the very least. But shit, fucking up here, losing time. And I'll leave right here. Shit, and I fucked up. Oh wow, no, he fucked up too. Well, I resigned up too quick. But yeah, most I find that the private sector does do alright.
Living.
Yeah. Yeah, the private sector does do sometimes they can do a lot better than the public shit. But usually the government, as we learned yesterday, gets slowed by bureaucracy. We were all watching a video on the pros and cons of big and small government and capitalism and communism mostly. That was yesterday. And I had so much fun, so I do it again tonight. But yeah, we learned that bureaucracy is kind of what slows the the spirit of, I don't know, that drive, that capitalist drive that gets you to do things efficiently. Yeah, there we go. It slows efficiency. So that's the main thing that stands in the government way when it does things. But overall, the government has the profit and the financial motive to drive almost anyone. It just depends if they're willing to dish out the capital. That's kind of the game, and that's when politicians get involved and all that bullshit. But overall, I think there are pros and cons for each one. But overall, when the government wants to get something done, it can, certainly.
And the same argument was made that private capital would never be sufficient to build the transcontinental railroads. Well, a man named James J. Hill proved that wrong. He built the Great Northern from Minnesota to the West Coast, and he built the most efficient route, the quickest route, shortest route, whereas the government subsidized transcontinentals. There were some beginning in the Lincoln administration, the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific. They were built, the routes there, if you look at a map of their routes, it looks like a cobweb, because every politician all the way out from the Midwest to the West Coast made the argument that in return for my vote for the subsidies, you have to run a line to my district, to my area. And so it looked kind of like this. Rather than a straight line from Minnesota to California, it looked kind of like this with, like a cobweb. It was extraordinarily inefficient. And if you read the history of this, it's a dramatic contrast between the efficiency of James J. Hill and the gross inefficiency and then eventually corruption of the government-run railroads, even though, even to this day, we're told that the free rider problem made it necessary for government subsidies. Here's in a biography of James J. Hill, the biographer Burton Folsom wrote, Hill's quest for short routes, low grades, and few curvatures was an obsession. Well, he was a businessman. He went the quickest route to the West Coast. In 1889, Hill conquered the Rocky Mountains by finding the legendary Marias Pass.
So yeah, he's just talking about all the great things capitalism done. But yeah, we got some newbies in the chat. Nice spicing it up. Welcome. First of all, we have Upstate Raider and Big Talk, Little Talk. Says, and Big Talk, Little Talk. Says, I was referred to this channel, capitalism like socialism is simply a systemic method to run and operate a society's commerce. The society's culture determines how pure or perverse it'll work. So, yeah, I think I see where you're going with that. Basically, each society or city has a mixture, usually, of communist and capitalist traits, obviously. But, yeah, the culture is kind of determine, how much they want people working, when, how much they want the wives to stay at home, if they want the women to work at all that shit plays a part in whether it's going to be a more communist or a capitalist society. How they want usually they want everyone to be productive and going to work and shit. But the times are changing, and you know, the society, things are a lot more imbalanced now than they've ever been, and people are starting to realize it. So that's kind of fucked with the you know, the capitalist status quo. So we'll see how that, you know, we'll see how that plays out. Things are kind of shaking up a little bit, for sure. Personally, I think we're due for probably a lot more socialist implementations. That's just my 2 cents. Let me see.
Lewis and Clark had described a low pass through the Rockies back in 1805, but later no one seemed to know whether it really existed, or if it did, where it was. Hill wanted the best gradient, so much so that he hired a man to spend months searching western Montana for the pass. He shortened his route by almost 100 miles. And so James J. Hill was the kind of businessman who left no rock unturned, and he built the greatest transcontinental railroad. And if you can compare this to the government-subsidized railroads, which was just a carnival of inefficiency. My favorite story about this was how the government-subsidized roads, actually, they were subsidized per mile by the U.S. government. And so they built railroad tracks on the top of 10 feet of ice pack at the beginning of the winters in the Rocky Mountains. And then when the ice would melt in the spring, it's all good because they get paid again. They would rebuild the track, and they would get paid twice for the same track. That's how they made their profits. And so that's the second example I would offer of the myth building that occurred in early America about the evils of the civil society and private enterprise system and the need for government to intervene and take over. And of course, there's the myth of the robber barons. Now, there were real robber barons. And I would hold out an example of Leland Stanford, the man who, the founder of Stanford University. He was the United States Senator and Governor of California, and he used his political connections to make it illegal for anyone to compete with his railroad in the state of California. And even a college professor like me could make money if I was in a legitimate business, and it was illegal for anyone to compete. I could make money for a while anyway, at least until golf season arrived, as far as that goes. But so he was a real robber baron, but others in the same industry, like James J. Hill, were not. And neither was Rockefeller. Neither was John D. Rockefeller in his oil business. Back when Microsoft was being prosecuted by the U.S. government, the judge in the case his name was Thomas Penfield Jackson, and he was eventually kicked off. He was eventually fired from the case by the 3 federal judge panel that hired him in the first place because of his bias. He gave an interview to, I think it was Atlantic Monthly Magazine, where he compared Bill Gates to Al Capone. And that was a little too much. That would be like the judge in the O.J. Simpson murder trial, just flippantly saying to the Los Angeles Times, "Yeah, O.J., he's a murderer," before the verdict came in. And so he was kicked off of there. But before that, he gave an interview saying that Bill Gates was just like John D. Rockefeller. He compared Microsoft to the old Standard Oil business of John D. Rockefeller. And one of my articles I wrote years ago on Mises.org said he's right. He's absolutely right about that, because how did Rockefeller make his money? Well, here's basically how he made his money. His chief critic was a woman named Ida Tarbell, one of the famous muckraking journalists, and her brother was the treasurer of the Pure Oil Company, which was driven from the market by the lower-priced Standard Oil. So she had a grudge, but even Ida Tarbell described the Standard Oil as, quote, a marvelous example of economy. In her book. She wrote a book called A History of the Standard Oil Company. And here's how Rockefeller made his money. The price of refined petroleum fell from 30 cents in 1869. He founded his company in 1866 to 10 cents by 1874 and 5.9 cents in 1897. So he caused the price of refined petroleum to decrease from 30 cents to about 6 cents in 1897. 1898, he's sued by the federal government for violating the antitrust laws. And during that time, his market share peaked in 1890, around the time he was sued, at 88%. But by the time the verdict finally came down on the antitrust suit, the year 1911, he still had over 300 competitors, and his market share was 11%. And so he was anything but a monopoly. But this was a classic case of how antitrust usually works. It demonizes a successful entrepreneur for cutting prices for decades and cutting costs and improving products and inventing many new products too. Vaseline and things like that were part of the inventions that came out of the Rockefeller organization. And at the same time saying, we, the government, need to protect you with our new antitrust law. And so they did. So they broke up the Standard Oil Company, and of course, there's one theory that is used to defend the breakup of Standard Oil by the economically uninitiated, and it's called predatory pricing. The argument basically goes that Rockefeller intentionally lost money on every barrel of oil for 30 years in hopes of driving all the competition from the market. And then at that point, then he could charge the sky's the limit and make a lot of money. That's essentially what they call predatory pricing. Some of my MBA students who work at Black & Decker in Baltimore.
All right, so I've heard a lot of these arguments before, basically just, cutting corners with, however you can to, ensure a better product, or, not paying your employees, as much as they might be worth, shit like that. I don't really subscribe to it personally. I think a person's time is valuable. So, and it should be treated with dignity, and with all this, all the modern technology coming out, like, people should be doing less work, not more. Let me see. But yeah, let me catch up on the chat. I'm just playing this fucking chess game. Let me see. But Upstate Raider. Hold on really quick. Propaganda. Also, the national parks were completed faster than scheduled. Private is better for small ventures, in my opinion. Yeah, probably propaganda. Anthony, like the UK letting Hitler loose in hopes he would turn to the Soviet Union. Upstate Raider, the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, popularly known as National Interstate and Defense Highway Act, Public Law 84-627. So, was enacted on June 29th, 1956, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the bill and the law. Wikipedia. Okay. Let me see. So Eisenhower signed that one in. Eisenhower's alright. He's the one who warned about the military industrial complex. Or so they say. There we go. I know I'm a little behind. Alright, hold on. Okay, now I see. Can't go there. Can't go there. Alright, let's try this. So let me see, hold on. So is there a PayPal link to donate? Great content. Shit, man. Yeah, I could put a link down there. Let me see, I didn't put it on. Damn, move the damn bishop. Alright. Oh, well, duh. Gotta do this. Let me see. he's got me separated from my queen. Sick bastard. Let me see. Should play this while I'm reading.
I asked them what their supervisor would say if they went back to work after taking my Saturday class and said that. So here's how we're going to make money. You know, this drill that costs us $50 to manufacture, let's start selling it for $10. It might take 10 years, but we'll eliminate everybody else from the world market for drills, and then we'll really make a killing. And of course they said I would be fired on the spot. There's no way I would keep my job if I was giving that kind of advice. And yet that's what people believe about John D. Rockefeller, because this demonization of private enterprise has gone on to this day about this. One more example of sort of the backwards history that I'll give about this is how the Great Depression ended. A lot of you know this. Maybe I guess a lot of you know the untruth. Probably more of you know the untruth about how the Great Depression ended. World War II did not end the Great Depression. World War II ended unemployment, because when you had 5 million people unemployed and you draft 11 million men and send them to war, that's a pretty good way of ending unemployment, isn't it? But of course, those men lived a very different life in the military in Europe and Asia than they would have lived back at home, returning to their families every night after work.
I'll go with the PayPal right
and so, unemployment ended. But the consumer part of the economy, the private part of the economy, was actually worse during World War II because of all the resources that were allocated for the war. There was rationing and things like that. But what really ended, finally, the Great Depression, was the demobilization of the Army after World War II, when the federal budget was reduced from about $95 billion in 1945 to $35 billion in 1947. There was a two-thirds cut in the federal budget in absolute dollars in 2 years. And as a result, 1946 was the most successful year of the American economy ever in the private sector. Private sector spending, consumer and investment spending, increased by about 15% in 1 year, and it's probably the most successful year ever in American history. Most people have never heard of this because it totally blows out of the water the idea of Keynesianism, the idea that massive spending cuts reduce aggregate demand, and therefore the economy will go into a depression. That didn't happen. The opposite happened about that. And so this is just an example of the things I write about. I guess the first part of my talk here is an advertisement for my book, How Capitalism Saved America. But that's the reason I wrote this book was right after the Enron scandal. You might remember the Enron scandals of some years ago, the accounting scandals. My publisher at Random House called me up and said, Michael Moore and people like that are going to be writing books arguing that this is inherent in capitalism, that this crookedness and corruption is inherent. It's not just Enron, it's everywhere. And sure enough, that was pretty much what we heard. And so he recommended to me that I write a book, sort of a defense of capitalism, sort of similar to Ayn Rand's old book, Capitalism, the Unknown Idea.
I'm sorry, I had that muted. Yeah, I said we'll set up the PayPal another day. I'm not gonna worry about it tonight, but I'll figure something out later.
But using historical examples of how capitalism did save America. So that was the genesis of that, as far as that goes.
But yeah, look, big talk, little talk says not all men are greedy, but we seem to promote an ideal of more. Maybe that's been capitalism's fault, but hunch is better, has been around before it. Maybe met Bunch. I don't know, I read them like I see them, man. BBC. But implicate, you know who you are. He says greed will manifest in capitalism regardless of personal intentions. Maybe. And Frank says we're not at a level of consciousness collectively for greed to be tamed. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's true, but I feel like it doesn't have to be. Like, humanity, we've been sapient for a long ass time, so all our setbacks are largely just artificial and self-imposed. But yeah, we're definitely not there now, unfortunately. but it says more about us than, you know, our consciousness. I mean, stupid that sound. I guess it says more about our instincts than our consciousness, because I think mostly our instincts are what's holding us back. But yeah, let him ramble on a little more.
And so, you know, the second half of my topic that I gave Doug to talk about is how government is destroying America. And, well, we could talk all day about that, couldn't we? How government is destroying America. But I decided I'd just mention two things. The current boom and bust and government employee unions. So the current boom and bust, of course, the Austrian view, is, which I believe is the correct view, is that the Fed is the main culprit here. And of course, the first thing Alan Greenspan did is to blame the whole thing on the fact that people in Asia save too much of their money. They don't spend enough. They save too much. I'm not making this up. He said this in one of his numerous autobiographies, that they drove down the world interest rates by saving too much. And of course, that's bogus. It was the Fed that created the housing bubble, which has now burst. And not only that, they at the same time that we had the housing bubble, we were in the middle of about a 15-year period where the U.S. government was doing everything it could do to pressure or even extort banks and mortgage lenders into making bad loans.
Yeah, implicate world order brings up a good point. He says there will still be massive private wealth accumulation whether the person has a bad character or not. And yeah, I think that's a pretty core problem as well. Because in capitalism, usually the CEO, the manager, the head guy, the founder, whatever, he's going to be making all the decisions, deciding how the money gets divvied up, you know, what has to be bought, what has to be sold, etc. Ultimately, it lies on his hands. So that's not the workers having the means of production. That's a CEO or a manager or whatever having the means of production and the means of distribution, how it gets distributed amongst the workers, and deciding pretty much, hey, how big do we want this carrot to be? How fast do we want the horse to chase after it? To pull our cart or whatever. So, and inevitably, one dude's gonna have way more money than the dudes below him, or the one lady, whatever, and it creates an imbalance, and ultimately creates a gross one. But I don't know, maybe that can be fixed with regulations. I think maybe in different countries they kind of, they have the wherewithal to, put a leash on some of capitalism's, darker outcomes. But I don't think America is anywhere near that state. Like, they actually have like rights in, I think, in Europe or so I hear. But Anthony says he has some trash weed. Man, I got some weed that's good enough. Got the fucking job done. Oh, did you guys see my grass? Hopefully that doesn't get us taken down. But yeah. And Upstate Raider says, I think time is the most valuable thing we have. Yeah, agreed.
To unqualified borrowers.
My cousin Joe, his favorite movie is that one with Justin Timberlake, where they use time as currency to like buy shit.
Oh yeah, my favorite movie.
Yeah, dude, we're all talking about that one. So it's kind of, besides the fact that it was starring Justin Timberlake, it was actually pretty good concept, decent execution. It was a pretty good movie. So it's just funny he brings that up.
This began in the 70s with the Community Reinvestment Act, which essentially did that, forcing banks to make dubious loans that they would not normally have made. But that act was greatly strengthened during the Clinton administration. And then it was people like Barney Frank and other members of Congress who instructed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to purchase trillions of dollars of these bad loans and bundle them and securitize them, so-called, and sell them. And of course, with an implicit wink-wink government guarantee, because it was a quasi-governmental operation, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And Doug mentioned I testified at Ron Paul's hearing a couple weeks ago. Barney Frank himself was there, and he was still bragging about this. He was bragging that we increased home ownership from 60% to 69% in America, and patting themselves on the back for this thing. And this is just evil. And so among the methods they use for this is, if you want to see what they did, go online and Google Boston Fed closing the gap. Boston Fed closing the gap. You'll find a report by the Boston Federal Reserve Board instructing mortgage lenders on how to close the housing gap. That is, there's a gap between people who can afford a house and people who cannot. And so the Fed said, we're going to close that gap. And here, among their recommendations to mortgage lenders, if it's low income or minority borrowers, they said, don't ask for income requirements. Don't ask for a pay stub. Don't do a credit check, unnecessary. Just if they're enrolled in a credit counseling program, that's fine. And I would think, by definition, if you're in credit counseling, you've had problems with your counseling over credit. No assets to back up the loan, don't worry about that also. And also, if the appraisal on the house comes in with the wrong number, see us, the Fed will find another appraiser for you. I was always told that you can get in trouble by doing that, maybe even go to jail. That's a fraud. But here's the Fed doing this. And then at the same time the Fed is publishing this, this very same publication threatens mortgage lenders with class action lawsuits if they don't do these things. And at the same time, when the bubble burst, the Fed comes out and says, we've got to do something about all this systemic risk that is created by the free market out there. If this sort of thing, strong-arming mortgage lenders to make bad loans to unqualified borrowers, if that doesn't create systemic risk, what does? But of course, the Fed uses this, as government always does. It uses a problem that it created to justify and rationale giving itself even more powers. And that's exactly what it did. And so that's how example number one, and how government is destroying America with the boom and bust cycle. And it was surreal to see Barney Frank and his fellow Democrats on this congressional committee literally congratulating themselves for a job well done, and refusing to accept any criticism of any kind of what the Fed did. They're not the least bit interested in that. They would do the same again tomorrow if they got back in power, and just start this up all over again. The second thing I want to talk about is the state and local government mess, where the Wall Street Journal reported recently that state and local governments have about 3.5.
All right, so basically this dude's talking about how the Fed's, printing too much money and overreaching their power, which is, I hear right-wingers talk a lot about that, how the Fed fucked everything up. And, they printed way too much, but really, I think the main problem was just that minimum wage never kept up with production. I think that's one of America's main issues. The Fed, whatever, they probably didn't help. But I think the main thing is, workers getting paid what they're worth, getting just paid enough to, buy essentials. We need to redefine what is essential and what people should be spending their checks on. Should they be spending half their checks on a place to live? Maybe that should only be a quarter of their check. Maybe the government should take care of it, or maybe it should be double what we're paying. Maybe owning space is just that precious. You know, I don't know. There's a debate to be had, but but I feel like no one important's having these conversations. But shit. Oh man, I'm even trying to catch up with the chat. But this channel name is called Mice Media. I think Frank Analysis as MISESMEDIA, Mice Media. So I don't know, just the first right wing shit I heard. That came up on the search, but fuck, I'm way behind. You guys getting busy down there. I'll let this play. I got some other videos lined up too. We'll check those out.
$5 trillion in unfunded pension liabilities, and that's in addition to everything else. That's just unfunded pension liabilities, and this really brought to mind what I've learned and written about for years about government employee unions and the power. Some of you may remember or have read about when Ronald Reagan fired the air traffic controllers. I think the acronym for the union was PATCO. And the reason he fired them was that there's a federal law that made it illegal for them to go on strike. Because in return for a monopoly on air traffic control, the government said no striking. You can't go on strike because you can close the whole country down in terms of air travel. And that's tremendous power. You see, when they have if a union has the ability to shut down an entire industry.
That's funny, dude. I was going to read Anthony's chat. He goes, "The Fed was created by a fucking banker." Isn't that just hilarious? Isn't that just hilariously unironic? Like a banker created the Fed. But why wouldn't they? So America would be broke without the Fed, probably. Just that and our imperialism's, I think, the only thing keeping America afloat right now. So we don't make anything. So yeah, just shooting shit and just printing shit.
Industry like that, it has tremendous leverage to cause a tax increase to finance its wage demands. So that's why it goes on strike. And so essentially it transfers the power to tax from the taxpayers, the voters, to the labor union. It gives them grossly disproportionate power over what the taxes are to be. And that was really the rationale for making it illegal for PATCO to go on strike. And so all Reagan did was say, I just took the oath of office to enforce the laws. This is against the law. You're fired. And he hired replacement workers. And of course, this is true in government employee unions everywhere. That it's not true that it's illegal for them to strike, but it's true that they have this disproportionate power. Whereas, when the teachers' unions go on strike in a city, they can shut down all the schools. Whereas if a grocery store, the employees of a grocery store go on strike, well, you can just shop at another grocery store, and the store owner has the freedom to hire replacement workers. And so, compared to that, the teachers go on strike, they shut down the whole school system, and civil service regulations usually make it impossible to hire replacement workers for government bureaucrats. Or if the garbage collectors, the city garbage collecting department goes on strike, the whole place is a mess. This used to be called the British disease back in England in the 70s when the British economy imploded. And we're seeing the British disease in America now. And this is a big reason why the late Milton Friedman referred to government bureaucracies as economic black holes. He said where, normally with an economic relationship, greater inputs lead to greater output. You hire more people for your business. Why do you do that? Because you think you have more orders, more customers. You're going to produce more stuff and sell it. With government, the more inputs, the less is the.
So I'm gonna go back to one thing. One thing I was reading in the chat. I think Scuffed wrote, "Yeah, Mises is the godfather of free market economics." Is that right? Is he like that? Oh my! I can't even say the name now. Oh yeah, the Keynesian, that guy, or I think his name was like Keynes. He's like one of those types where like they name shit after him.
The output more often than not. The more money we spend on public schools, the dumber the kids get. The more money we spend on poverty programs, the more poverty there is, and on and on and on. And so Friedman...
Oh, he's literally just this guy. They say they play Mice's videos at Guantanamo Bay. That's wild.
He said this in an essay called Input and Output in Medical Care, which is published online by the Hoover Institution, where he did a study of, as government has taken over more and more of the healthcare sector, he said, we began to see this. We began to see more inputs, more money, more beds, more doctors, but lesser healthcare. He made that case. Okay, and so that's one of the reasons we're in trouble with the state and local government. It's the incentive system that exists with government employee unions. And another problem that they create is that, think of the incentives here. If you're the mayor of a city or even the governor of a state and you have a government unionized workforce and they're demanding more money, as they always do, they're demanding more money. If you give them a pay raise today, you're going to have to raise taxes somehow. That loses votes. So it makes you unpopular, you the governor or the mayor, whoever it is, you're unpopular, you lose votes. You win the support of the union, but you lose votes. It's not great. However, if you offer them modest wage increases, but promise them the moon with retirement, that's the perfect recipe, because when the bill comes due, you, the governor or the mayor, will be long retired, maybe even dead. So it's the perfect recipe for deferring or delaying the cost of selling out to the unions and avoiding a strike, avoiding the schools shutting down, avoiding the garbage not being collected for 3 weeks, and all the other things. Because if that does happen, you, the governor or the mayor, will catch hell. You know, the people are going to complain, why isn't the garbage collected? Why aren't the kids in school? You're responsible. It's not the unions that are responsible. It's you, the elected official. And so it's a win-win situation for politicians to give government employee unions extravagant pension promises, even if the wages don't increase too extraordinarily, which they do. I used to write in the area of labor economics, and there's an economist named Sharon Smith that I can remember 30 years ago. She was publishing in some of the big economic journals the wage premium that government employees were getting, and on average, even then they were being paid, and according to her research, as much as 40% more than equally educated, equally qualified private sector employees. And these things change year by year. But so it's been, the point I'm making, it's been known for a long time that even the wages are sometimes out of sync compared to the private sector when you compare the unionized workforce and the government.
Maybe I heard that wrong, but it sounded like he said that the state employees were making more than the ones in the private sector.
It's been known for a long time that even the wages are sometimes out of sync. The point I'm making, it's been and these things change year by year. Equally educated, equally qualified private sector employees, and these things change year by year. But so it's been the point I'm making, it's been known for a long time that even the wages are sometimes out of sync compared to the private sector when you compare the unionized workforce and the government. And of course, another thing that's an element of the incentive system with government employee unions is because of civil service regulations, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to fire a government bureaucrat unless some extraordinary crisis occurs, like in Wisconsin today. And so what do you do if you can't fire the government bureaucrat? To fire this person, the union will immediately file a lawsuit. That's what they do, because the unions are all about maximizing dues revenue. That's what they maximize. They don't maximize, that's their profit. The more union members, the more revenue. The fewer union members, less revenue. And so they'll fight in the courts when you try to lay off a government bureaucrat. And so if you're a manager of a government enterprise and you really want to get rid of this person, what do? Well, you offer them a pay raise and a promotion. In the case of teachers' unions, that might mean get the math teacher who can't add and get her some job or him some job in the central administrative office. and give them the duty of administering the whole school system along with the other teachers who can't teach. And that's why in big cities all over America you have these gigantic bureaucratic monstrosities, the centralized administrative office, and that's who's there. It's all the teachers who are so horrible that they would go, not everybody, but they would go from school to school to school. Parents would complain bitterly, my math teacher can't add and subtract, and so forth. And then finally the superintendent would give up, and you can't fire them. They have tenure. Give them an administrative job. And and unlike the private sector, failure is actually rewarded with regard to employees. And also, unlike the private sector, where you have an incentive to minimize the number of.
Damn, so he went in on teachers. He went in on the whole fucking education system. Made it sound like they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. I think, personally, adding and subtracting isn't that fucking hard, alright? It depends on, if you want to call these teachers inept, well, what grade are you talking? Like, what level? Like, are you bitching because they can't do algebra, or are you actually bitching because they can't literally add and subtract 2 plus 2? You know, because, it makes a difference. You know, it doesn't take much trust to like teach fucking K through 12. Well, yeah, K through 12. So I mean, if you've seen teachers that bad, sounds to me like there's not a big enough incentive for them to grow as teachers. And maybe they should be getting paid more. Cause come on, teachers ain't that bad. Jesus Christ.
Employees that are on the payroll to do a job. In the government sector, the incentive is to maximize the number of employees, because every government bureaucrat is worth at least 2 votes. You can count on every government bureaucrat to get a spouse or an adult child or a friend or a brother or sister to vote for the guy who gave you the job. And so to a mayor or a governor, patronage jobs is, so what, you used 3 people instead of 2 on the garbage truck to collect the garbage, like the private sector does, for example. It's all good to the politicians because it's more votes and more patronage jobs. So there's a built-in incentive to use more people than you're necessary to do the job. That's why, one of the reasons why all these studies that have been done comparing private and government sector service provision have come up with what economist Thomas Borcherding calls a bureaucratic rule of 2. If you ever transfer some function, garbage collection, whatever, from the private sector to the government sector, on average it'll double the per unit cost, and quality will probably go down too. And this, of course, is one of the reasons that this happens. So the government unions are champions of feather bedding. And of course, the final purpose of the government union is that they are relentless propaganda machines who will always make the argument that if you are against their particular program of what they're doing, say they're administering poverty programs, if you criticize what they're doing, then you hate poor people. That's your motivation. Okay, or if you're criticizing what the public teachers unions are doing, well, you must hate children, obviously. And Friedrich Bastiat pointed this out in his famous essay, The Law, which is probably for sale out back. The socialist of his day, this is the 1840s, he pointed out in one part of this book that they were making the same argument in his day when he was saying that things like a minimum wage law wouldn't work, and laying out the economic reasoning. He was accused of hating poor people. And so if he was making the case against high tariffs and in favor of free trade, well, he must hate workers in general because they're being protected by protectionist tariffs, supposedly, in his day. So this is not a new argument, but I'm sure everyone here, if you think about it, you probably have heard that argument somewhere along the line, in that how uncaring you are if you oppose their particular program, and that's what they do. And as von Mises wrote in Human Action, labor unions in general have always been probably the principal purveyors of anti-capitalistic propaganda. because it serves their purpose. It serves their purpose to tell people that capitalists and business people are out to harm you in every way imaginable. Therefore, you need a union to protect you. That's in their economic self-interest to do that. And so they have always been that way for the most part, although there have been some exceptions. And so those are the two examples I thought I'd give, contemporary examples of how government is destroying America. But the Fed...
Okay. So is that really all there is to it? That these unions formed just because, purely because it's in their economic interest? Not because there's ever been a history of abuse or anything like that. It's just, you know what? These workers, they got a pretty sweet deal, but you know what? They had a real sweet deal, but they got greedy. And really the only thing left for them to do, logically, was to ask for more. So of course the unions sprang out. Like, that's really this guy's argument. Like, they didn't have any, there was no raw deal before. None of that. You know, the workers just got greedy. Okay.
And its antics and the public employee unions, and I can't predict what's going to happen, but it was fun. I have to admit, it was fun. I watched on television yesterday where these government bureaucrats were screaming their heads off in Wisconsin at the state legislators who voted to sort of end the gravy train for them, and I could see the veins bulging and the necks were all red, the faces were red, and the sputtering and spitting and chanting. That's basically what they do. And we have a few people from Baltimore here. A couple of years ago, since I'm on unions, every time I'd go downtown, like at the lunch hour, there was a group of people walking in a circle chanting something. And finally I got close enough that where I was doing business was near where they were. And for a year, the same people walking in circles. This was during the housing boom. This is before the bubble burst. And I finally went over there and they're holding signs. I knew it had to do something to do with labor unions because they're walking in circles and yelling. And so if you see a group of people walking in circles and yelling, you can bet it's probably organized by some labor union. And so and sure enough, they were yelling, no pay, low pay, no way, low pay, no way. And just walking by them, I think made me legally have too much of a high blood alcohol content to get in my car and drive back to work. Just breathing in the air as I walk by them. And it turns out a Baltimore...
Yo, what up, Gray Walker? Long time no see, bud. Just watching this, dude. Video's almost over.
Sun reporter went up to these people and asked who they were. They were mostly homeless people that were paid by the carpenters union to protest that the carpenters were only being paid $20 an hour to build houses in Baltimore. And the reporter asked the union guy, well, why aren't there any actual carpenters here? And this was during the housing boom, and they said, well, the business is booming, and they can't afford it. They're making too much money, working. And the opportunity cost, they understand opportunity cost. It was too high, so they hired bums at below minimum wage. They actually found out they weren't even paying them minimum wage to walk in circles and scream low pay, no way. And they should have been protesting the union paying them less than the minimum wage rather than this. But that's the spectacle that we see in Wisconsin and elsewhere. So enjoy it while it lasts. And that's about all I have time for.
Alright, so that's one man's opinion on the awesome perfection that can never be questioned. We call it capitalism here. Maybe you've heard of it. It founded this country, our great lands. It molded our culture and just brought a spectrum of different people together in a beautiful melting pot of rainbows and puppies we call America. And the only problem, and I guarantee the only problem with this country are these is everyone just hates on it too hard. That's the only criticism. That's the only thing wrong with America is people are just jealous of it. So let me see. I was gonna watch Crosstalk real quick, cause why the fuck not? But first I gotta let this stupid ass ad play. Let me see. I know we bougie up in here, Grey Walker. We ghetto as fuck. We got ads and shit. Fucking playing chess stone as fuck. We don't give a fuck over here, you know.
Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Nominally speaking, the role of the media is to inform the public. This mission is now on hold. Large parts of the media landscape, particularly big tech, actively intervene to determine what the public can know and from whom. Has controlled speech replaced freedom of speech? To discuss the media and more, I'm joined by my guest in Los Angeles, Kim Iverson. She is the host of The Kim Iverson Show. And in Nashville, we cross to Roger Simon. He's an award-winning novelist and Academy Award-nominated screenwriter who is now the senior political analyst for the Epic Times. All right, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Okay, let's go to Los Angeles. I always go to the guest that got up earliest for this recording, and I really appreciate it, Kim. Kim, there's something I've noticed, and it's happening over a number of years, and particularly, since the advent of the Trump presidency. Where have facts gone in journalism? They seem to have evaporated, or maybe I'm missing something here. Because we don't have fact-based journalism. I understand the difference between fact-based journalism and opinion journalism, and both are acceptable. But fact-based journalism seems to have been suspended. Let's put it that way. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to figure out where we can find actual fact-based journalism these days. And, it's really interesting to me that so much of the journalists that are out there right now, or the news organizations or the entertainment news organizations, are so against Trump and so obviously biased for Biden. You know, one of the interesting things about that is that they make so much money off of the Trump administration being in the White House. And so it's interesting that they blatantly, they overlook facts, or they don't report on them. They don't give the full story. And it's just head scratching to me that they would be this way when it seems beneficial to them, actually, that Trump is in the White House.
Yeah, Rogers, there's going to be something called the Trump hangover in media if he loses on the 3rd, because they will miss him dearly. They're going to miss him for their bottom line. Do you think Joe Biden, people going to tune in to find out what Joe Biden had to say? Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It'll be a financial disaster. And in fact, it's kind of funny to think about it, because they're fools. They should now suddenly back up 8 days before the election and try to get Trump elected again for their own benefit. Of course, they'll never do it. But, we think about your intro, of course. I feel funny because I'm someone who woke up one morning and had 15,000 Twitter followers deducted from my account.
Oh, yeah.
How? I don't know. And could I complain? I thought about it for about a minute and a half, and I said, first of all, you feel like an idiot. Okay, I lost all these Twitter followers, as if that were of any importance. The other thing is, who do you complain to? Twitter? They won't even answer me.
But that's the point here, Kim. What universe are we living in where Facebook and Twitter determine what news we can consume and where we can consume it here? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a shareholder in these companies. I don't know if anybody elected them. Were they elected to anything except for maybe boards from their shareholders? I mean, this is an unconscionable situation and an unprecedented one. Why should these private individuals be able to determine the media landscape? And we're basically, as citizens, we were told we're given the right to determine our political destiny, but we're not. We're being interrupted. We're being paused. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, these media giants, these tech giants or social media, they are controlling the narrative. And one thing that we really need to pay attention to is that, yes, they are private, and yes, they have the right to do it, I suppose, because they are private companies, and people always point that out. But they are being pressured by Congress. We have to remember that since 2016 and since Russiagate and the Democrats just blaming everything on Russia, that they went after these social media companies and saying, you are to blame for Russia. And so they went after them, they pressured them, and a lot of this censorship that's going on with the big media companies, social media companies, is actually directly coming from Congress. And that is something that I think people shouldn't overlook, that where does that fall when it comes to infringing on our freedoms and infringing on that First Amendment. With that government pressure, it seems to me that that is an absolute infringement.
Yeah, because, Roger, the way things are going, I mean, people, the powers that be, the professional managerial class that looks down on everyone here, they're always complaining about conspiracy theories. But the way they manipulate the media, what do you get as a result? You get people thinking conspiratorially, like, why is this happening? Okay. Why can't we know? Okay, the whole scandal or alleged scandal. I'm always careful with my language surrounding the Biden family. I've been presented by some news outlets facts, what they determined to be facts. Okay, and fine, let them go where they were. But Russiagate was just allegations and leaks and anonymous sources that were never proven, ever. But when you have a case, there's a hard drive, there are witnesses, there are wire orders for money. These are real things that we have a right to consider. Okay, and particularly if the accusation of political malfeasance is in play. Go ahead, Roger.
Well, Twitter gets away with suppressing a lot of this because of something called Section 230 in the legislation, which is now under review actively. I live in Nashville, and my local senator and friend Marsha Blackburn is in the forefront of getting this revised. What Section 230 does, for your listeners that don't know, is it sort of gives Twitter, Facebook, etc., a firewall against being sued for false material or suppressing material, which of course they do, because it treats them as if they were not publishers. But of course they are publishers. In fact, they're becoming increasingly publishers. So they're getting away with murder. And in fact, they're smarter publishers than real publishers because they're sort of leech publishers. So in that way, I think that people should support this revising of 230 because that's really going to hopefully help. But I think it's got to go much further than that.
Kim, you already brought it up. These are private companies because when I think that all of us we came to understand censorship as the state censoring people here. And I think that's kind of a more pure traditional definition here. But we don't live in that world anymore. Facebook and Twitter are essentially utilities now. They function as utilities right now. And so I think the censorship, the laws we have about censorship should be applied to them because they act like utilities. They don't act like monopolies. They are virtual monopolies. So these laws should apply to them as well. So we have to amend. And then 230 isn't going to be enough. Okay, we're going to have to do more because if we don't do it pretty soon, then we won't know what we're losing. We won't know what we don't know. Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. These social media companies are, in fact, utilities. We are not, if they're publishers the way that they're sort of behaving at this point, then every single one of us that's using the platform is essentially what some kind of contractor of their publishing service, where they're editorializing us, and are we being hired? I mean, it becomes this kind of interesting, where do they really fall? And they haven't been able to really define their business model. And for the user, it's obvious what the business model is. We're using it to connect the same way we use telephones to connect, the same way we use Zoom or any other sort of service to connect with other people. And they're saying, well, no, but you might be able to blast out your opinions and your fake news conspiracy theories to thousands of people. Well, those thousands of people had to actively choose to follow you. They had to actively choose to friend you, or watch you or subscribe to you or whatever it is, the platform. So really the definition for these companies does need to be nailed down. And then after it is completely defined what they are, then they do need to be regulated in a way that is appropriate for their business model. But in my opinion, they're absolutely utilities, and they should not be getting in the way of my communication with you.
You know, Kim brings up such an excellent point, because all three of us, we create content. What about our rights, okay, as creators of content here? Because, Roger, the same thing happened to me on Crosstalk. I mean, I noticed that, the number of hits for a program has gone down steadily, but the number of comments remain the same. That's really quite remarkable. I wish they could explain that to me. And of course, other programs, and then just for our YouTube page, the subscriptions wobble up and down, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. And then when we ask, there's never an answer. Go ahead, Roger.
Never an answer, and they control the algorithms. And for that reason, you and I and Kim are all continually at their prey. For whatever we write, say on TV, write on an article or whatever, is under their control. And we have no idea what those algorithms are doing. And they change them all the time on us. So it's even worse. I think that Google is more dangerous even than Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, fucking Whitney Webb and Last American Vagabond, they were streaming a little bit earlier today, and they were talking about this shit a little bit, about how they're definitely gonna plan a false flag attack, a cyber one, they say, and so it's gonna be the excuse to fucking have everything run by AI and shit. And it sounds out there, but you never know. And they were they were of course sourcing it with documentations and citations when needed and all that. So very bizarre shit, man. Fucking Anthony, you dropped a vid on Iran. Fucking yeah, we'll take a look at that. Trying to figure out how I want to play this bullshit. Actually, let's just finish this.
And going back to what Kim was saying, which I concur with entirely, the fact that these companies are global gives them an influence that nothing in history has even remotely had. I mean, these are they're other than the countries where you can't even see them, like within Iran or someplace, they have more power than any state. They're beyond it. They control the flow of information globally. It's really scary, actually.
Yeah, I mean, what makes it more scary is that there's no accountability. I mean, if we have a politician, you can, bring out your broom and, just say, sweep them away in the next election here. But there's no accountability. I mean, for example, the way they're treating the story surrounding Hunter Biden. I mean, they don't give us any explanation why you're doing what you're doing when you went after the president of the United States for almost 4 years without any facts that were discernible and provable. But in this case, there's a lot of interesting things, but it's one-sided, it's hypocritical, but they still don't say anything. They might. I know that they're being pulled in front of Congress to explain themselves. I will eagerly listen to what they have to say, because there is no explanation, reasonable, honest explanation for what they're doing. Go ahead.
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean, it is interesting. It's kind of what you said earlier, where they're controlling the narrative leads us all into feeling even more conspiratorial. I mean, they say, oh, we got to stop the fake news and the conspiracy theories. But then the rest of us sit back and we see them doing this. We see them controlling the narrative, censoring information, choosing what we can and cannot see. I mean, even groups of doctors, researchers, politicians, journalists, everybody gets censored on their platform. It doesn't seem to be just your basement dwelling conspiracy theorist. It seems to be anybody and everybody that they just don't agree with, or a narrative that they don't like to.
Yeah, they're definitely coming after everybody. Like, this channel is not exactly PewDiePie, and they still felt it incumbent upon themselves to censor the fuck out of my QAnon video. Like, I'm the fucking founder of QAnon. I didn't even know what the fuck it was before that video. But that's what these algorithms do. They don't care. You know, you put a word or some shit in your video, and they just take it down willy-nilly. So, welcome to fascism.
To hear, and it is something that it is very scary that it's a form of mind control. I mean, it sounds conspiratorial, right? But it's a form of mind control. It's a form of brainwashing the public into believing one narrative and one narrative only, and they aren't held accountable.
We're going to go to a hard break, and after that hard break, we'll continue more discussion on media and journalism and big tech. Stay with RT.
You only need one.
All right, I'll play up Anthony's suggestion here. Let me see. Has Jimmy Dore ever covered the Uyghurs on his show or one of his guests? Like Cenk Uyghur? I don't know. I don't know who you're referring to. But Anthony's got a vid. Go ahead and throw that on.
You might ask if this phenomenon can be reversed, and also how did this happen?
Global dimming, the aerosol masking effect. Interesting indeed. Alright, we'll check it out.
No to the former. And allow me to explain.
We may have grossly underestimated the speed at which our climate is changing. At its heart is a deadly new phenomenon. One that until very recently, scientists refused to believe even existed. But it may already have led to the starvation of millions. The trail that would lead to the discovery of global dimming began 40 years ago in Israel with the work of a young English immigrant called Jerry Stanhill. A train.
Oh, those are the Chinese Muslims. That's what they call them. The Uyghurs, or I wouldn't even know how to say that. Yeah, I've definitely learned something new.
Biologist, Jerry got a job helping to design irrigation schemes. His task was to measure how strongly the sun shone over Israel.
It was important for this work to measure solar radiation because that is a factor that basically determines how much water crops require.
For a year, Jerry collected data from a network of light meters. The results were much as expected and were used to help design the national irrigation system. But 20 years later, in the 1980s, Jerry decided to repeat his measurements to check that they were still valid. What he found stunned him.
Which reported a decline in pan evaporation over Russia, United States and Eastern Europe. And there, in the measurements, they said that the pans had on average evaporated about 100 millimetres less of water in the last 30 years.
Mike knew how much sunlight was needed to evaporate a millimetre of water. So he put the two sets of figures together, the drop in evaporation with the drop in sunlight.
So you just do the sum in your head. 100 millimetres of water, less of pan evaporation, 2.5 megajoules, so 2.5 times 100 is 250 megajoules. And that was in fact what the Russians had measured for the decline in sunlight in the last 30 years. It was quite amazing.
It was the same with Europe and the USA. The drop in evaporation rate matched exactly the drop in sunlight reported by Beate Lippert and Jerry Stanhill. Two completely independent sets of
Is this one of those chemtrail videos where basically they say that like the contrails behind the airplanes are they're causing global warming and shit? Tim Bob.
observations had come to the same conclusion. Though it seemed incredible, there was no doubting global.
Hey, what up, Edward, aka Tori was cracking. Did I watch Netflix? Yeah. Did I ever check out Midnight Gospel? Nah. Today we're watching Queen's Gambit, which is why I'm playing chess and totally humiliating myself. Let's play homage to Queen's Gambit. It's a good show on Netflix. Basically about this this orphan who has these incredibly autistic tendencies, but she ends up being like a chess whiz. Yeah, it was a good show. The Midnight Gospel, we'll try to check that out. And Scuffed called next, so it has begun. This nigga over here making popcorn.
Popcorn, pop your ass.
Yeah, he sure will. Shit.
All in a sudden, you see, oh my God, the world is dimming, and then all in a sudden you see, oh my God, this really has a tremendous impact.
And it had to be dimming in Europe, and in America, and in Russia. This is on a global scale, and we thought this is really important because the amount of dimming was enormous.
Between the 1950s and the early 1990s, the level of solar energy reaching the Earth's surface had dropped. 9% in Antarctica, 10% in the USA, by almost 30%.
Yeah, I'll try. What's Midnight Gospel about? What's the synopsis without giving away too much?
50% in Russia, and by 16% in parts of the British Isles. This was a truly global phenomenon, and Jerry gave it a suitable name: global dimming. Less energy from the sun should be making the world cooler. Yet scientists knew the Earth was getting hotter, as the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases we emit trap ever more heat in the Earth's atmosphere and cause global warming. This is the crux of the problem. While the greenhouse effect has been warming the planet, it now seems global dimming has been cooling it down. So the warming caused by carbon dioxide has been hidden from us by the cooling from air pollution. But that situation is now starting to change.
We're going to be in a situation, unless we act, where the cooling pollutant is dropping off while the warming pollutant is going up. CO2 will be going up and particles will be dropping off, and that means we'll get an accelerated warming. We'll get a double whammy.
Simulation farmer? How do you be a simulation farmer? Yeah, that shit sounds trippy. Midnight Gospel. I'll check it out.
We'll get reducing cooling and increased heating at the same time, and that's a problem for us.
And that's not all. Climatologists like Peter Cox have begun to worry that global dimming has led them to underestimate the true power of global warming. They fear that the Earth could be far more vulnerable to greenhouse gases than they had previously thought.
We've got two competing effects, really. That we've got the greenhouse effect, which has tended to warm up the climate. But then we've got this other effect that's much stronger than we thought, which is a cooling effect that comes from particles in the atmosphere. And they're competing with one another. And we know the climate's moved to a warmer state. If it turns out that the cooling is stronger than we thought, then the warming also is a lot stronger than we thought. And that means the climate's more sensitive to carbon dioxide than we originally thought. And it means our models may be undersensitive to carbon dioxide.
And it had to be dimming in Europe, and in America, and in Russia. This is on a global scale, and we thought this is really important because the amount of dimming was enormous. So this is big on a global scale.
But what was causing it? Scientists knew that there was nothing wrong with the sun itself. The culprit had to be here on Earth. And as they searched for clues, they would make another startling discovery. For 4 years, every possible technique was used to sample and monitor the atmosphere over the Maldives.
Wow, kick ass. So we got a contrail vid there. That was interesting. Move on to Scuff's thingy-merbob here. But yeah, now check out that show, sis. As soon as I get some time.
Nature of capitalism that it must expand.
Let me see. Start a new job tomorrow. Just more warehouse shit. So, The Nature of Capitalism by Michael Parenti and Art House Politics.
A no-growth capitalism, as some of our more naive ecologists have argued for, is a contradiction in terms. The reason you invest is to accumulate. And your accumulation of capital has no purpose or meaning unless you can mix it with labor to yet increase your wealth further. And of course you use large sums of it for personal consumption and for political power and for control of your culture and for that wonderful, good, happy life that you so like. Now that nature of expansion really affects the nature of, it's an important imperative because it means capitalism also can never stay home. It goes abroad. If you ever saw the film Controlling Interest, there's a corporate president who says, those corporations that stayed regional in New England years ago and decided not to go national, we can't even remember their names. They died. We had to go national. And those of us who are now national know we have to go international. We have to invest abroad. So one of the laws of capitalist motion and development is this inexorable expansion. And that means expansion into an expropriation of the third world. A process that's been going on for about 400 years, perpetrated by the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the Dutch, the Belgians, the French, the English, and most recently, most successfully, most impressively, by the Americans. That is by the ruling classes of these countries, not by the ordinary people. The ordinary people simply paid the costs of empire. The ordinary people simply sent their sons off to die on the plains of India.
Fucking Victoria, The Mandalorian, the first episode. I think that shit just came out.
On fire.
And that's the full episode for sure. It's not some trailer or some shit.
It's the full episode.
Damn. Should be reacting to that shit. It's all good.
The jungles of the Congo or in Latin America or wherever else.
It'll be like all the audio scenes.
But that expropriation of the third world that's been going on for 400 years brings us to another revelation. Namely, that the third world is not poor. You don't go to poor countries to make money. There are very few poor countries in this world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is rich. Chile is rich. Only the people are poor. But there's billions to be made there, to be carved out, to be taken. There's been billions for 400 years. The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the copper, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
Bravo. Interesting vid, Scuffed. Yeah, it's funny that all these countries are pretty rich in resources, but yeah, the people are always seem to be struggling. It's definitely true. Let me see. He said Mike watched it with mom. I think he's gonna be the Mandalorian. Hell yeah, send me some pictures of Mike in his Mandalorian costume. Can't wait to see that. Yeah, that's nice. So everybody said happy Halloween too. That is dope. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Anthony, about skipping your vid there. Just trying to keep it thematically the same for this episode. So we're trying to do more capitalist shit, you know. But we'll do a global warming thing. I know it's fun to mix it up too. But tonight I ain't got the energy.
And that's the story.
And I start a new fucking job tomorrow. So I can't be on too super long. We can go a little longer.
What the haters talking about?
Yeah, happy Halloween, Grey Walker. For sure. And Amazon lost the helmet to the costume. That's retarded. He's gonna be Mandalorian without the helmet. He has to wear a whack ass mask that came with the costume. Damn, it's all good. I'm sorry. I hope you guys can hear that. It's my fucking cell phone needing to be charged, but me not wanting to fuck with it. All right, I'm just taking it out. I hate this phone. Anyway, it's all good. You can still have fun doing something. But yeah, we're gonna watch Billy D. Hillbilly Trump supporter says there will be a second civil war if he loses. Uh-oh. See what that's all about. Sounds serious.
I knew it.
A second civil war. I didn't like the first one. Uh-oh.
What's up, family? There's a hillbilly in the sticks of Virginia named John. At least that's what he calls himself. He could be anybody. But That's the name he gave to a reporter by the name of Hugh Remington. This guy says that if Trump is not reelected, there could be a second civil war. Here are the main conditions. Well, there actually is not any conditions. There was one condition. The Democrats can't cheat. If the Democrats cheat, it's going to be a civil war. What John is basically saying is, we cheated last time to get in 2016. If you don't let us cheat this time, we are going to start shooting people. If you don't let us win, we are going to start shooting people. They're basically saying that if Trump loses, automatically they're going to look at it as somebody cheated. Because you know Trump, that's what he's going to say no matter what. He's already saying people are cheating. Remember he said that last time? When he was running in 2016, he said, well, you know, they're going to cheat. They're going to try to rig it. It's going to be rigged. It's going to be the whole time. They got us looking over here, trying to watch these folks. And he's cheating and colluding with Russia the whole
right. So, yeah, obviously, Willie D does have some boomer-esque views about how the 2016 election played out. And, yeah, he's voting for Biden, so he's all that boomer shit. It's all good, man. I do enjoy his show sometimes. And, you know, everybody's got their point of views. Nothing wrong with that.
Now,
yeah, here we go. Not a long video. Dude, his audience went in on him, too, when he announced that he was voting for Biden. Because originally, he wasn't going to vote. And then he made a video he was streaming a couple, I think yesterday, actually. Yeah, I think like early yesterday. And he says, y'all changed my mind. I'm voting for Biden. I'm going to suck it up. I can't stand Trump. So they went in on him in the chat. And eventually, he got kind of pissed and stopped streaming. So, yeah, he's one of those. But it's all good, you know. It could be better, but it's still good.
Where was these bleeding heart, Constitution-loving patriots when Trump was cheating? Oh, yeah, they were right behind him, cheering him on. Go Trump. Yeah, go Trump. All of them got one thing in common. They got that do as I say, not as I do mentality. They love the laws as long as it favors them and them exclusively. They can never, ever have a situation where it looks like they can't take advantage of the law. They love breaking the law, don't get me wrong. Trump calls himself the law and order president, but he breaks the law more than anybody. He is used to lying, stealing, being corrupt, doing anything that he can to circumvent law and order and justice, accountability. The dude said in the debate, the second debate, I accept accountability, but it was China's fault. Man. When in your lifetime have you ever heard somebody say, I accept responsibility, and then say, but it was such and such fault? The dude is gone, man. He cuckoo.
Yeah, Trump totally
He's deranged.
That.
And the people
like, honestly, I don't. That's a good question. Who fucking says that kind of shit? But then again, I did pretty much the same thing, dude. I said I was going to keep it in theme tonight. And then I ended up started watching Willie D. So, you know, everybody lies. But this fucker's the president. Expect a little more.
Follow him are deranged. especially the ones who are talking about getting it on. They don't understand that it's not going to go like they think. See, what they do, they like to show off. They like to show everything they got and they like to show all that stuff, right? Real bad boys move in silence. So don't think that while you're doing all that shooting, ain't nobody gonna be shooting back. They love the Constitution, but they're willing to break it. They're willing to disrespect it in order so that their guy can win. Anything short of a win, Trump is going to say that the election was fixed. It doesn't matter what happens. If he loses, he's going to automatically think that it was fixed. So these clowns out here who are riding for him, making excuses, and also these same people that are talking about cheating, they're the same ones who are taking part in voter suppression, voter intimidation. They're approving these mailboxes being removed and thrown into the rivers and lakes, and people pouring liquids into the mailboxes to damage the ballots. They're approving all of those things. I don't know where they come from. I don't know what planet. But I can tell you this. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And nobody is going to push me around or intimidate me. I don't give a damn who they are or what they do. I don't care if they're black, brown, white, big, small, rich, poor, goons, militia, gang, solo. It don't matter. I want every last one of y'all out there who got it on your mind to know this. Whatever you can do to me, I can do to you. No more talk.
What the man is talking about.
Yes, that's Willie D breaking it down. You know, sometimes his politics are questionable as fuck, but ultimately I like him. I've been listening to Ghetto Boys since fucking high school, so you know I was thrilled when I found out Willie D started streaming. Shit, I was happy as fuck, and that's fine. Everybody got their own politics and own way of doing things, but yeah. These motherfucking Trump supporters, it's the weird thing between the left and the right now. Where the left, if we talk about violence, right, we'll do it like in a joking manner. Or we'll say something so extreme that you can't possibly take it as anything other than a joke. Like, for the most part, there are exceptions. You know, like, oh, fucking Trump, man, I wish a fucking bear would come and eat his ass out or some shit. Or, man, I wish these Trump supporters would go fucking jump off of a roof or something. Whatever. The right's a little different. They're serious about their homicide. Or at least they want the other side to believe they are. And they have really no fear in hiding that from what I've seen. You know, like, if you go to like a right-leaning stream, the commenters and usually more so often just, you know, the people in the chat or whatever, their followers, they can't go like 2 seconds without talking about taking up arms and just shooting Antifa or lighting up Black Lives Matters, just like terrorist shit, like literal shit that if the Department of Homeland Security were doing their fucking job, or if the NSA were doing their actual fucking job, they would pick up on the kind of things these people would say, and they would actually take action. But they don't give a shit because they're white or whatever. But I don't really hear too much of that on the left. And if you do, it's kind of like a hushed whisper, like, "Hey, man, I think, you know, like maybe this peaceful revolution shit ain't working out so great." Like, the left's a little more careful about it. You know, the right, they'll like just proudly say, "Man, I can't wait for the war to start. start just blowing away these fucking Antifa fucking immigrants. Man, I'll fucking check my country. Can't fucking wait. Woo! Like, they're just fucking... Like, there's no, like, culling that shit or bringing it in. So, I don't know. It's just something that I noticed. They'll overtly just talk about just terrorist acts that they want to carry out. And nothing, man. Nothing ever happens. Let me see. My computer's kind of spazzing. Yep. Clicking on shit for like no reason. Anywho. Let's check out some more capitalist shit. Since we're trying to find all the great things about capitalism, I can't think of anyone better to defer to on the subject of capitalism and the concept of capitalism and all things capitalism than my everybody's good buddy TFM, the turd flinging monkey, who currently I think he's pastor of this cult called MGTOW. Maybe you've heard of it. It's basically like these guys who, you know, they can't get laid, so for some inexplicable reason they hate immigrants and Mexicans. You know, I don't really know how you get from A to Q like that, but they managed to find a way. Anyway, let's see. He has these stupid ass streams on BitChute called the Morning Constitutional. Real hilarious shit to check out. I'm trying to find the most recent one. Not seeing anything. Oh, you're MGTOW, Grey Walker. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I feel like the movement was pretty much perverted. I'm talking about MGTOW as it is now, not how it used to be. I think it started out as something noble. Like, it was more like just, oh, go find yourself. You know, don't let women define you. And hey, let's uplift men. Yeah, let's get, you know, let's fight for equality in the courts. You know, fathers' rights. It used to be all about shit like actual issues, and then it just kind of devolved into what you're probably going to see right now. Just a lot of commie hating.
But our next.
Let me slow it down.
Our next article, our final article, we have a solution. Finally, men are problem solvers. They've come up with a solution. Our final article of the show. This is from The Guardian. Philippines. Rodrigo Duterte, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, orders soldiers to shoot female rebels in the vagina. That the Filipino Punisher is how you do it. Now, yes. Now here's the spot. Now he's talking about communist soldiers. Like, these are female guerrilla fighters. Now, I want to juxtapose this because he's being attacked as a misogynist and a woman hater and blah, blah, blah. In France, during World War II, when the Nazis occupied France, all these women fucked the shit out of the Nazis, and a lot of men also collaborated with the Nazis. When the Nazis were finally expelled from France, the men were killed as traitors, justifiably so. The women were not only not killed, were not only not physically punished, were not only not mutilated or shot in the pussy, they had their heads shaved. That was their big punishment for treason and for fucking Nazis who were, like, taking over your country. You got your head shaved. Boo fucking who? Oh no, you got your head shaved. Fucking stupid. This guy's at least, he's not talking about killing them. These are guerrilla fighters. He's just talking about shooting them in the pussy. And he's like, oh, how misogynistic. Well, you should.
Now, I'm no doctor. But I don't know. If a woman gets shot, like, directly in the pussy, like, if a bullet goes through her vagina, like, couldn't that theoretically, just hypothetically, maybe, like, I don't know, 5 times out of 10 fucking kill her? sounds a little harsh. But I mean, yeah. I mean, it's war and shit, but whatever. It's the kind of thing he gets off on. he's ex-combat, so all this talk of violence and shit's what gets his his little monkey dick hard. So whatever.
Be dead. If you were a guerrilla fighter, a communist guerrilla fighter, you should be shot. You believe in gender equality, don't you? Oh, what happened to all that gender equality? Now the time to get shot and executed for treason. We can't shoot. You're a woman. But before, fuck, men and women are equal. He's talking about shooting them in the fucking pussy just so that they're useless.
Shooting men in the junk is considered comical in this society.
Right, yeah, like a guy gets shot in the dick, like that scene in RoboCop, where the guy's got the knife to the girl's throat and RoboCop shoots through the dress and shoots the guy in the dick. That was a great scene. Right? Nothing wrong, but shut up. I mean, I get the double standard. I understand the double standards exist. But, at least I can see his point. At least he's not saying, let's just shave their head, call it a day. Yeah, they're traitors. They tried to overthrow the government. They're guerrilla fighters. They're active military combatants. But let's just shave their head, call it even. That's fucking stupid. If you're going to kill the men, shaving the head of the women makes no goddamn sense. So, shooting them in the vagina.
I mean, if you're going to go to war, you shouldn't pull your punches or, safety your trigger for anybody. If you see an enemy combatant, I don't give a fuck what gender they are. If they're gunning for me, they're going down. But first of all, why the fuck are you there with a gun in the first place? Like, if you're actively going places to fight communism or terrorism or whatever the fuck, I don't know, maybe you deserve to get shot at. Now, I understand, during the first two wars, we were lied to or whatever. Okay, but, eventually the grift gets old. You kind of have to get hip to it, And I understand times are harsh and shit, not everybody, some people, they join the military to get ends and shit, but, so, it's a risk you take, you're talking about potentially ending another person's life as a career. It's something to think about. I don't know. It wasn't a problem for him. TFM, I mean, I think he's ex-combat, and he doesn't look like he has PTSD at all. He tells all sorts of story about being in the trenches and shit, but I don't know, whenever he talks, I don't detect any hint of remorse for anything that he did. And that's whatever. I wasn't there. I'm not going to pretend to know what goes on in that, in those situations, but what really bothers me, the only thing that bothers me is that it doesn't seem like he's learned anything from it. He doesn't come across like, shit, I was had. They fucking sent me across the fucking Pacific just to shoot at people who, have serve no threat to the United States. These people probably have more in common with him than the fucking overlords who sent him over there to do that shit. But I mean, whatever. You can't reach everybody.
I know. Sure, I'll take that as a compromise. Shoot him in the fucking vagina. Fucking tear that roast beef apart. Turn it into pulled pork.
Right.
And
the thing about it is some of these women are probably such thoughts they might not even feel it.
Yeah, no, here's Congresswoman so-and-so talking about he's the most dangerous macho fascist in the government right now. He has further presented himself as the epitome of misogyny and fascism rolled into one. These are communist guerrilla fighters. I would just shoot him in the fucking face. I'd line him up along with the men and have them all executed. He's just shooting them in the pussy. Hashtag shoot him in the pussy. Donald Trump can grab him and then he can shoot him. Just like a 1-2. Holds him up. Guy fucking pop.
Yep. Here's the thing too. Yeah, here's the thing. The reason this started is because he was fighting drug dealers. And then he realized that these drug dealers were using the drug money to fund a rebellion against him.
Yeah.
And that's what he was like, here we go. This is what we're doing.
Yeah,
so he was shooting drug dealers.
These are communist rebels. These aren't just like...
Yeah, where didn't they got all those drugs, huh? Where the fuck they get all that money? They got the money from selling the drugs, but who let them sell and grow all those drugs? And how come they have to sneak behind the government's back with extra fucking arms and weapons as security just to cash in on a market that should be free and open to everyone? Let's think about that. Could it be the bullshit drug war that I know for a fact TFM supports because he's fucking insane and has no principles? You know, he purports to care about the economy and doesn't want to legalize weed. What kind of fucking sense does that make? What planet are we even living on?
Feminists, like, oh, these weren't women protesting the pay gap. These are women with guns who are guerrilla fighters who are launching a coup attempt against their government. These are people who should be killed for treason, and he's just shooting them in the pussy, and he's getting shit for it by these fucking... These women should be tried for treason as well, and they should get shot in the pussy. All these female politicians are like, he's a misogynist and he's a fascist macho. All right, well, you're obviously on their side. Fucking bam! Now your pussy's been turned into fucking pulled pork. Anyone else? Anyone else?
You know the best part? You know the best part about this is? The money quote right under the video is, in a speech to over 200 former communist soldiers in whatever the fuck the name of that city was, in the Philippines, the president gave the directive of what to do with female guerrilla fighters. So in other words, not only is he talking shit about this, he's actually telling the fucking communist soldiers to their face what the fuck he's going to do. That's a fucking pip hand strong.
Right. Well, yeah. Like, again, this ends when men end it. He is showing us the way, my brothers. He is showing us the way. He says, we will not kill you. We will just shoot you in the vagina. He went on to say that without their vaginas, women would be...
Yes, this is the way. No, I don't think he knows the way. But you see how much he gets off on these strong men, like these dictators? You know, it's just weird how he purports to be all individualistic, all pro-liberty, you know, pro-freedom, free market, liberty, all that shit. But he supports all these strong men like Duterte and fucking Trump and Saudi Arabia. I mean, the man's ridiculous. I wish I could show you the video where he said, "Oh yeah, I've got data that says Saudi Arabia is the happiest country on the planet. That's why we need to take away women's rights. Look, they took away their women's rights. Look how happy they are." Like, first of all, I don't give a fuck how happy a country is, dude. I care how cool that country is and how cool the people are. But even barring that, why would you even like trust some sort of census or some poll going around in Saudi Arabia about how happy they are? Like, that's trustworthy. Like, the government's just not gonna fuck with it and be like, see, citizens very happy. Here, United Nations. Here, Human Rights Watch. We all good here.
Yeah, Steve Ford.
Shut up, Muhammad.
Yeah, Steve Ford tapes.
Yeah. So it's retarded. Like, yeah, I don't give a fuck how happy a country is, and neither should anyone. Oh, God, I wish I could find that video. It's old. It's one of his many just dumbass tirades.
Yes, he's right. Yes. He gets biology.
We need like that M. Bison. Yes. Right. Yep.
I'm still in favor of a 12 gauge to the face, though.
I agree. I mean, I get the point of, these women are a resource. Just like, when you take over a place, you don't want to destroy, like, you don't want to burn the farms because you can capture the farms and you can use them to produce food for your people. You don't necessarily want to kill the women because they're a resource. You could use them to create children for your... I get that. But examples need to be made for fucking communist guerrilla fighters. I mean, if once you take up arms and you're like actively trying to overthrow the government, you need to go. Your pussy, I don't care. Your fucking crazy genes need to end with you. We will get along fine without your precious genes.
Yeah, until someone is in charge of a government that he doesn't like, and he doesn't like how it's being run. Like, no, God forbid Bernie Sanders gets in. Let's see how quick TFM starts talking about taking up arms and Viva la Revolution.
Genes in our genes.
He's already talking about taking up arms against the fucking protesters, the legal protesters, the unarmed protesters in the street now. They're talking about revolution now. So why is acting like, man, as soon as you start talking about fucking overthrowing the government, man, fucking you gotta go. Government's gotta make an example. But yeah, he's pro freedom and liberty. I'll tell you what. Never met a more pro-freedom guy in my life than this fucking douche.
Pool when you're a communist guerrilla fighter. Because that's the thing is this pussy pass being extended to treason. Like, come on. We have to draw. At some point, the pussy pass has to be revoked. What is it going to take? We're talking murder and treason and coup attempts.
You know, like I get what the guy's saying. Like, oh, you know, once you pick up a fucking gun, it doesn't matter if you have a pussy or a dick. You know, and if you're fighting for communism, that's even more reason that you deserve to die, whatever. You're the fucking arbiter of who gets to live and die. I get it. I don't see it that way. You know, if people are giving these gorilla bitches a pussy pass just because they got a pussy, the way I look at it is that's one less person dead on the earth. You know, that's one less fucking corpse we gotta clean up. One less funeral, alright? Even if it's completely unfair and if it's only because, you know, they got rock hard at the sight of the enemy and just couldn't pull the trigger. You know, even if it's that fucking stupid for that dumb a reason, whatever. That's less dead people, as far as I'm concerned. And as far as this asshole could be concerned, if you thought about it for more than 2 seconds, those communist gorilla bitches that you just want to shoot in their pussy, that are like surrendering to you or whatever, you could convert them into capitalist bitches pretty fucking easily. Just marry him to a capitalist man, and there you go. Now they're capitalist. They've converted. But no, fuck it. You just fucking kill them. They'll never learn. Kinda seems like a waste of a good pussy.
At what point is the pussy pass actually revoked? Does it never get revoked? A woman could be like a satanic baby-eating crazy person, and like, oh no, her pussy's too valuable, brah. Like, she's insane. She worships the devil. She's eating babies. Can we stop giving her the pussy? No, again, she's got a vagina. Like, come on, man. Like, what do women have to do to lose the pussy pass? Is there any line? Is there a line that exists in reality where a woman could cross that line to such an extent that the pussy pass gets revoked? I don't know.
I don't think we want to see that point.
I think being a female communist guerrilla fighter definitely crosses that line.
Yep. So I would agree.
Yeah, so this dude, Philippines, Rodrigo, what's your face? You get the golf clap of the day, my friend. You get the golf clap of the day. Well done.
He doesn't mind being charged in the criminal, basically being held as a criminal, committing crimes. He's just like, whatever. Just let him win when it comes to my jail cell.
Well, I mean, what is the fucking UN going to do? UN is fucking toothless. And the US is running out of money. So the UN is a joke, because without the US bankrolling them, they can't do shit. He's got his own fucking country to worry about. He doesn't give a fuck. Nor should any man give a fuck. Like, just do what must be done.
He knows what must be done.
He knows what must be done.
That's why his nickname is Filipino Punisher.
That, you know what? He's the president. You know, we got President Trump standing up against Me Too. We got the president of the Philippines shooting him in the pussy. Could this be the beginning? Could be. Do we dare hope, this mad hope, that at the 11th hour, men might find their pimp hand and turn this ship around? Dare we hope?
It's like so simple-minded. So to be fair, I think this video is a little old, because I heard that fool DDJ in there, and I know he's not on the show anymore. So, you know, this was back when, I guess TFM had hope for Trump or whatever. I think he still does. I think he's still voting Trump. But I mean, do you see like all it takes for them to be like, oh man, this is greatest president ever. He's right wing. Like, to live in that world, you just have to have no problems, like, at all. You gotta have incredible privilege just to be like, well, don't concern me, never will. I mean it. Never say never, motherfucker. But whatever, he's prepared for that, I'm sure.
I don't know. I'm cautiously hopeful, but I'm preparing for the worst.
Prepare for the worst.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway, fuck that shit right now. Let me skip around as constitutional. Actually, I think Scuffed's in a video. We can watch this one later. So, let's see here. Oh shit. Yeah. Greywalk says modern day feminism is very misandrous. Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, pretty much most of feminism was largely misandrous, and it just kind of got worse with each wave. The way I look at it is, like, we're at a point where I think we legally have the same rights. So anyone pulling for more rights than the other, I'm looking at kind of suspect. Like, oh well, what's your end game? When anyone starts asking for extra rights. But I don't know. Shit, we're looking for Scuff's link here. Here we go. Excuse me. Schedule stream. Here we go. Oh, that's not it. Crap. Hold on. All right. Yeah, I found it. Yeesh. All right. Should put it in here. Sorry about that, guys.
November 2019 marks the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, or the...
Let's see. What's the ERA, Greywalker? Break that down real quick. ERA.
The anti-fascist protection wall, as it was known in the communist world. Although the wall itself was small, encircling only West Berlin, its destruction was more a symbol of the general collapse of socialism in all...
All right, on the Equal Rights Amendment. Let's see. Fourth passage of the... So it's an Equal Rights Amendment. So what's in the amendment, do you know?
All of Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. And while many cheered on the day they'd finally be able to travel to the West, scores of others who stayed behind began to dread what came next. Capitalists from Russia and abroad had once again laid claim to the country's natural resources and the labor of its people.
С университетским образованием я вот, на 51-м году жизни 13-летнего воспитываю ребенка. И уволена, сокращена. На что мне кормить? Я не говорю одевать.
Mass privatization and economic shock therapy became official terms for legal banditry, as public workplaces, built and administered by the working class for so many years, were simply bought, dismantled, and sold for a fraction of their value abroad. Religious cults began to emerge, as many desperately sought purpose in a then seemingly purposeless world. One of the largest Ponzi schemes in history preyed on the vulnerable, wiping clean the bank accounts of between 5 to 10 million people. And yet, our own capitalist media and academia have conditioned public consciousness to make most people think the 90s decade was when Russia got its freedom. For so many years, Westerners were taught to fear communism, as if it were the Black Plague. But over the decades following the end of the Cold War, anti-communists have had a change of heart. The boogeyman no longer looks like this.
I must break you.
She looks something a bit more like this.
Ты чё плачешь, можешь мне сказать?
Советский Союз хочу.
А почему?
Там весело. Вот ты что видела? Там хорошо.
Что там хорошего?
Там много хорошего.
Например?
Знаешь.
Колбаса вкусная была.
Колбаса вкусная, мороженое вкусное, да все настоящее. А вот это...
Что настоящее?
Все так должно.
Зима?
Что даже песенка настоящая.
Песенка не настоящая. А что там настоящее? Новый год, зима.
Там все настоящее.
А сейчас ты чем недовольна?
Что все не настоящее.
Ты же тогда не жила, ты же не знаешь, как тогда было.
А я хочу тогда быть.
А откуда ты знаешь, как тогда было?
Старички говорят, все про...
Какие старички?
Показывают все оттуда.
И что теперь делать? Вернуть Советский
Союз.
And then it hit me. Take a trip to the Soviet Union? That's not a bad idea. So I decided to take all of you along for a walk in my East Moscow neighborhood called Sokolinaya Gora to talk to some of the people from the Soviet generations and find out what they think about their former lives under socialism. So let's go. I first came across a very nice young lady named Zhana Georgievna, who was enjoying the afternoon on a park bench.
Так, а как ваша жизнь была в СССР вообще?
Нормально, все хорошо было.
И почему? Какие аспекты
потому что
очень
я
хорошие?
работала,
Да.
я была молодая, получала, в пределах того, чего получали в основном все советские инженеры. И работа у меня была хорошая, так что у меня было все нормально.
А вы считаете, что жизнь была лучше тогда или прямо сейчас?
Вы знаете, я не могу сравнивать. Есть и за, и против. Но тогда как-то все воспринималось в более таком хорошем свете, смотря с этой колокольни.
А что делали люди в Советском Союзе со своим свободным временем?
Что делали? Много чего делали. И в театры ходили, и в походы ходили по субботам, по воскресеньям, и собирались вместе, и общались очень много. Нормально.
И многие люди на Западе часто говорят про дефициты экономические в Советском Союзе. Как доступна была еда или продукты?
Единственное, не знаю, я никогда не голодала. У меня было все, что я хотела. Может быть, там черные и красные икры, но они все равно были на столах, когда были праздники.
Да.
Так что все это было.
Это очень круто. Да.
Все это было.
А скажите, пожалуйста, как были 90-е годы для вас?
90-е годы были тяжелые.
Почему, например?
Потому что, во-первых, я уже не работала, во-вторых, был сплошной дефицит всего абсолютно, полки были пустыми. Изгалялись кто как может, кто куда ездил. И по родственникам, которые были не в Москве, ездили туда, и картошку покупали, и что-то еще, что-то там, если можно было бы, покупали. Все было нормально. Тяжело было, конечно.
Да, наверное, я могу представить. Я на самом деле историк советской истории, так что, да, это наш проект.
Если вы историк, то вы знаете, что это такое.
Да. И проблема в том, что многие на Западе этого не знают. И это проблема.
Не дай бог им никогда этого не узнать.
Да.
Дай бог.
Да. У меня еще два вопроса. Многие считают, что демократии вообще не было в Советском Союзе.
Вы знаете, я с политическими вещами не сталкивалась, но то, что мне нужно было и можно было, и даже не можно, а то, что я хотела, я делала.
Отлично.
Я делала. У меня все было. То, что я хотела, я получала.
А если бы вы могли бы что-то восстановить от советских времен?
От советских времен?
Да, а то что это
Я бы хотела восстановить доброжелательность людей. Люди сейчас стали очень злые. Видно, очень устают. И, в общем, не такие доброжелательные. Может быть, это просто уже на старости я это понимаю. Я не знаю, как это. Да. А восстановить хорошее здравоохранение, лучшее было оно, да, и учеба. Вот смотришь сейчас на свою молодежь и понимаешь, что они учатся не так, как учились мы в Советском Союзе. А система образования была там лучше.
After a great conversation with Jana, my stroll through the neighborhood saw me cross paths with another friendly lady named Nadezhda Ivanovna.
У нас была очень хорошая, я считаю, нормальная жизнь в том плане, что люди друг с другом больше общались, добрее были друг к другу. Так что вспоминаю по-хорошему.
А вы считаете, что жизнь была лучше тогда? Или вот прямо сейчас? Или...
Вы знаете, по-разному можно считать. Экономически тогда труднее было, а сейчас экономически легче. Тоже по-разному. Одни разбогатели невозможно как, а другие, вот как были, от зарплаты до зарплаты так и живут. Поэтому не могу сказать, что очень улучшила жизнь. Но отношения между людьми стали хуже, потому что все стали как-то каждый о своих интересах заботиться. Раньше был коллектив.
Очень интересно.
Вот, поэтому, не знаю, я ни то, ни другое не могу уж очень хвалить, но вспоминаю с удовольствием то время, когда жили в Советском Союзе. Считаю, что мы хорошее потеряли.
А многие люди на Западе говорят часто про экономические дефициты, как вы сказали. А как доступна была еда или продукты?
Доступна была еда, мы же голодными не были.
Да.
Нормально было. Сейчас лучше снабжение, лучше в магазинах. Я ничего не говорю.
So far, according to this lady, it's a little anecdotal, but she said there were no food shortages in the Soviet Union, that the stores were usually stocked. So it goes a little bit against the famine criticism that lots of people like to hurl at communism. So that's a little interesting little thing that she's explaining there.
Говорю. Но морально тяжелее.
А расскажите, пожалуйста, немножко про 90-е годы. Как
90-е годы ужасные были. Ничего не скажешь. Было очень тяжело. Была растерянность, потому что действительно одно государство менялось на другое. Вот. Трудности были большие, но преодолели. Сейчас уже лучше жизнь стала.
Еще один вопрос. Если бы вы хотели восстановить что-то из советских времен, то что это было бы?
Восстановить прежде всего взаимоотношения между людьми. Они были добрее, сердечнее. И, наверное, много мы потеряли, потому что слом произошел государственный, и часть мы потеряли хорошего, то, что было, а в новом оно еще не пришло.
Lastly, we met a man named Anatoly, and he had a story I really didn't expect to randomly run into on the street.
Это как вам сказать? Это если бы мне было сейчас 30 или 40 даже лет, я бы, наверное, немножко по-другому сказал.
A little better scuffed.
А мне уже за 80. Так что я вырос, молоко материнское пил в то время. И то, что произошло в 91 году, да и сейчас у меня на душе. Как такую страну можно потерять, как Советский Союз. Не Варшавский договор, не все. Страну, родину потерять. Я имею в виду родину и даже Украина, Беларусь, а тоже Таджикистан. Это для меня была родина, Советский Союз. Поэтому я душой и сейчас. Я живу в России, а душа моя там.
В Советском Союзе.
В Советском Союзе. Я вырос, стал как человек, я там.
А если бы вы могли бы что-то восстановить от советских времен, то что это было бы?
Знаете, это пустой разговор.
Да?
Восстановить ничего невозможно. Это я прекрасно понимаю.
Да.
А поколению нашему, не мне, нашему поколению, старикам, и особенно там, где были немцы, была оккупация, было все уничтожено. И вот нашему поколению надо государству больше внимания обращать. Больше. Великая Отечественная война, да, она абсолютно каждую семью в Советском Союзе. Не в России, а в Советском Союзе.
Да.
Как-то коснулась. Но в какой-то мере, не каждую одинаково. Там, где не было оккупации, там осталось у тебя и жилье, и хозяйство, и что-то нажило, оно осталось.
Да.
А то, что тяжело было, да, тяжело. Все для фронта, все для войны, все для победы. Это правильно, это правда. Но после войны у тебя крыша над головой, одет, что тут одежда какая-то была. И другое дело, я еще раз подчеркиваю, где была оккупация. Вот у меня, сколько мне там во время Великой Отечественной войны было, до сих пор стоит перед глазами, как немцы отступали, как они нашу деревню жгли. И так как у матери нас было 4, мать не могла куда-то там далеко подальше в степь. У нас на Украине лесов не было. В степь. Уйти, ушли во враг, и мы видели, как нашу деревню, наш дом горел, немцы жгли.
Это ужасно.
Ужасно, ужасно. Что творилось в деревне? Скотина орет, это ужас. У меня перед глазами до сих пор она осталась, и не могло не остаться.
Да.
Потому что это ужас, ужас.
Да.
А про Советский Союз я не про то, что он хорош он был, плохой он был. Это совсем другое, я не хочу судить, не хочу говорить. А то, что родина моя Советский Союз, и родина моя была и Грузия, и Таджикистан, Узбекистан, и Белоруссия. Вот где моя родина. А сейчас, что на Украине творится? Вот я сам с Украины.
Да.
Вот что я должен в душе иметь? Мои там родственники, мои там друзья. По интернету, по скайпу со своими родственниками начинаешь разговаривать.
Они на Донбассе?
Нет, они в Харьковской. И все равно я чувствую, что они боятся мне, как родственнику, сказать правду, как они живут. Вот что я должен думать о Советском Союзе.
Well, there you have it. A narrative about Soviet society from the mouths of people who actually lived in it. Next time a boomer says socialism doesn't work, show them this video.
He's like, whatever. They still interfered in our elections. That's why we gotta wipe them off the face of the earth. It's the only solution. Here? No. Of course I kid. That's very good video. Thanks for that. I think that was Scuffed. It's a good looking out Scuffed on that. Let me see. Put on some Kimmy real quick. Second wave of COVID. Heard they locked down fucking Riverside. My cousin told me they locked down Riverside because of this COVID shit. And I'm like, damn, nigga, the whole city? Oh, the times they are changing. Definitely. But now we got Kimmy Iverson. See what she has to say about the second wave here.
All right, well, stricter COVID lockdowns are happening all across Europe. So let's go ahead and look at where they are locking down again, because you know what? The United States is only just a few short weeks behind Europe. So whatever they do, if you remember what happened in the spring, whatever they do, we're about 3 weeks behind them. And then suddenly it hits the United States. So it is very possible that the United States goes into lockdown once Europe starts implementing these lockdowns. So it's important we pay attention to this because we could be next. Now, we are clearly in that big second wave for COVID. This is something that I talked about in the spring, that, you know, it looked like this virus has a weather element to it. It seems to like certain temperatures more than others. It seems to like that 50-degree range weather is where it seems to spread the fastest, at 40s and 50-degree temperature Fahrenheit. And that is where a lot of the, France, Germany, you've got the northern states, a lot of those guys are hitting that weather pattern right now. And so we're seeing a lot of the virus surging again. We hoped, there was a possibility. Of course, it didn't happen, but there was a possibility it would go away in the summer, the same way the flu tends to go away. And unfortunately, it did not go away in the summer. It didn't. Now, it wasn't nearly as virulent. Is that the right word? Virulent as it is right now. So in the summer, it did depress. So we could see that there clearly was a weather element to the virus. Throughout Europe, in particular, they didn't really see any surges in the summertime. In the United States, we saw surges, especially in those hotter regions. And that was because people were staying indoors and they were using air conditioning. And that was spreading around the virus, was that air conditioning, lack of UV light. The air was just trapped indoors. It wasn't going outside and being killed by that UV light. And so, and I know health officials were really hesitant to say air conditioning during the summer, because what they were really afraid of was that people would be afraid of their air conditioner, they wouldn't turn it on, and then we would see a spike in deaths from heat stroke. So they were very, very cautious about talking about it, and I don't blame them for that. But in Europe, we didn't see that wave. They don't have air conditioning so much in Europe. The buildings are really, really old. They're like 600 years old over there. So here in the United States, on the other hand, it's a different story. So Europe is seeing the big surges. Yesterday, President Emmanuel Macron announced a nationwide lockdown. This was about as strict as the one that they imposed in March. People are allowed to leave their homes only for school, essential goods, and work, if their employer says it's impossible to do the job from home. They also have a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the larger cities. Also, Germany has enacted a partial month-long lockdown. Germany has said that restaurants, bars, gyms, concert halls, and theaters will close starting November 2nd. They're going into a lockdown. So also, you've got Sweden. So here's one thing that's really interesting. Sweden is also doing not a lockdown. Now, Sweden doesn't believe in the government enforcing lockdowns on their population, but because they're all seeing a spike in cases, but not a spike in deaths. And we're going to go into that here in a second, because really, I think cases are important, but deaths are really what we should be looking at, hospitalizations and deaths. And in Sweden, this came from Swedish News, they said that from October 29th, the public is recommended to avoid indoor environments like shops, shopping malls, museums, libraries, swimming pools, and gyms, as well as meetings, concerts, exhibitions, sports training, matches, and competitions. Businesses have also been told to take measures to make sure recommendations can be followed, including shops and shopping centers reducing the number of people they let in and making it easier for staff to work from home. So Sweden doesn't believe in lockdowns. They're just making recommendations. It is up to the public whether or not they want to follow those recommendations. It is up to the stores whether or not they also want to follow those recommendations. No one is going to go to jail or get cited or be fined for not following these recommendations in Sweden. That is the difference between France, Germany, and Sweden right now, and that has been the difference all along. Now, if we let's go ahead and just kind of take a look at what we're dealing with as far as the second wave. Let's go ahead and start with France. So this is what we're seeing in France. You can see right here that now France did really strict lockdowns early on, and really, lockdowns, guys. Lockdowns are lockdown is not a strategy. This is, I think, a big mistake to be doing these lockdowns. They're not a strategy. A lockdown, the purpose of it was you lock down so you can buy yourself some time to come up with the strategy. So the strategy should be getting more PPE gear, getting more tests if you're going to do a testing and tracing strategy. Maybe your plan is to get a lot of UV lights and disinfectants out there and plexiglass up wherever you want to get that up, or that would be potentially a plan. Or maybe your plan is to double or triple your hospital capacity, building field hospitals the way China did, kind of up out of nowhere. That would maybe be a strategy. Maybe another strategy is, you got to figure out how you're going to best protect those in the nursing homes, maybe getting them out of nursing homes, spreading them out, trying to give them more social distancing in some way if you possibly can. That would be a strategy, right? Locking down, the purpose is to get you to a strategy, is to say, okay, we need to lock down so that we can figure out our strategy and implement it. But the locking down itself is not a strategy. And it's a strategy I would say it could be a strategy if you have an effective vaccine or an effective therapeutic, but it's not ready yet for mass production. So you could say, okay, crap, we got this effective vaccine, let's say. They don't, but let's just say we live in a world where they did. Then they say, well, okay, in order to manufacture it to distribute to the population, we need 1 month. So then they say to us, listen, everybody, hunker down for 1 month. And then in 1 month, we're going to roll out this vaccine and then everybody can come back out. That would be also a strategy. But the actual locking down, you're just hiding away from the boogeyman that's outside your front door. And when you go back out your front door, the boogeyman will still be there. And obviously the locking down is crashing economies. We all know that when economies go down, life expectancy goes down, malnutrition goes up, disease goes up, it kills people. Economics, low economics, poverty kills people. It's not a good strategy. When you're trying to save lives, why would you implement a strategy that then kills them? So, that's my overall take on lockdowns. I don't think it's a smart idea. I think the government's role is to give us information the way they do in Sweden and Japan, where they say, look, this is what's happening. This is what we recommend. It's up to you if you want to do it or not.
Yeah. So, at the risk of sounding too conspiratorial, we've gone over documents and videos on this channel already about how a lot of the numbers are blown out of proportion in regards to the death counts in a lot of these countries, America included, because they're not really accounting for control groups and things like that, and it's just a mess. And a lot of these people are, they happen to have the virus when they die, but it's not necessarily clear whether or not it was the cause of their death and whatnot. But I don't want to, undersell the lethality of COVID. It's not something I really want to do. But I do kind of question, the methods. Is any of this shit really working? Who exactly is it, that it's... Because, just because it only kills old people, I don't think that's a good enough reason just to be like, okay, well, I guess it's over. Everybody party and shit, It's still a potentially very lethal virus. But, I understand what Kim's talking about, the economy and all of that, but if this virus were as deadly as they're making out to be, I'd be like, oh yeah, close everything down until we get it under control and whatnot. But there's too much. Oh, my phone just died. Great. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this shit. I only know what the information I've been given on it, you know, through the gracious internet that we have. So I don't know. It's fucking COVID shit. It's fucking bonkers.
Now let's look at France. They did a big lockdown, and here they are now. Their cases going up, and up, much higher than what they had back in March and April. They had a bit of a spike in April, as you could see, but not much. Now they're having a serious spike. But what matters is not the cases, but the deaths. So let's go ahead and look at their deaths. You see that they had a lot of deaths in April, and then it went way down in the summer to next to nothing. And then it's starting to go back up. Their curve is going back up with deaths. So they're worried, and that is why they're going ahead and going back into a lockdown with no strategy beyond the lockdown itself, you know. And now it is not April, guys. It is October. If we know that this virus is going to stick around, maybe, you know, through May? Through May into June? Are they going to lock down from October all the way through May or June? That's a good question. They say no, just 2 weeks, right? Everybody says 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, and that has turned into months and months and months. Here's Germany. Let's go ahead and take a look at Germany, since they're also going into lockdown. New cases way up, but let's look at their deaths, because that's what matters. Okay, they are seeing an uptick in their deaths, so they're worried. They're trying to avoid a spike again in deaths, so they're locking down. Let's go ahead and look at the UK. The UK is also in lockdown in some parts. Here is their new cases all the way up. Seeing lots of spikes there. Deaths are also going up. Now let's go ahead and look at Sweden. Let's see how they're doing, because everybody criticized Sweden and said they were a disaster. And they weren't any more of a disaster than anybody else. I mean, that's the thing. Sweden showed that without lockdowns and without enforcing them, they were not the disaster. They were not better, and they were not worse than all of their neighbors. When it comes to where they fall, you know, the United States are doing worse than Sweden. The UK is worse. A lot of countries are worse. All the European countries are practically worse than Sweden, or in the same boat as Sweden. And without having to do lockdown measures, Sweden's economy did take a bit of a hit because they're not isolated from the world, but they did do better than the rest in Europe. More importantly, people in Sweden report that their mental health is way better. They're not afraid. You know, they're not living in so much fear. They're still seeing their loved ones. They're still celebrating. They don't have those crazy, ridiculous, like Thanksgiving rules we've got here in California, where we're basically not allowed to have Thanksgiving or Christmas this year unless it's outside and less than 2 hours long and socially distanced, and, you know, like all of these crazy, measures that people are not going to follow. Here's Sweden. So we can see that their cases are going way up also, but their deaths, let's take a look at their deaths. Oh, here's their deaths. They're not seeing a spike in deaths. That's interesting. That's really interesting. The other countries, we saw the spikes in deaths. We saw the death curve going up. Sweden's death curve is not going up. Now let's take a look at their neighbor, because everyone wants to compare them to their neighbor. It is, by the way, unfair to compare Sweden to Finland or Norway. Finland and Norway have very few people. If you're going to compare Sweden to anybody, it's Denmark. Copenhagen and Stockholm would be similar cities. Norway and Finland don't really have that level of density or population. They're naturally very socially distanced in Finland and Norway, so you have to compare them more to Denmark. So here's Denmark, and here's their cases. Their cases are going way up. So they're on that upward trajectory, and let's look at their deaths. Their deaths are also going up. That is something that we're not seeing in Sweden, and Sweden's disastrous strategy. Real quickly, let's just go to this worldometer. I just want to show you where they actually do fall. Here's the worldometer COVID countries. So that we could just see where these countries all fall. Now, what matters when you're looking at a graph like this is what matters here is the death.
Yeah, upstate right here, Japan did really good when it came to Corona. That's true, but I mean, it could be argued Japan, they were already social distancing well before that shit hit. So it's like, yeah, they were waiting for that shit to strike.
Death 1 million per population is what you got to go to. So you have to sort based on deaths, not on cases. Cases really is determinant on how many tests you are giving. Obviously, if you don't test anybody, you're not going to have any cases, supposedly, right? And if you're administering lots of tests, you might get lots of cases. So what matters really when looking at the data is how many people are dying, what, you know, who's really, really sick, the hospitalizations and deaths there. So looking at the deaths, 1 million. You've got San Marino, which is a tiny little country, I think near, where is San Marino? That's in like Spain or France. It's a tiny little, so let's go to the big ones. Peru has got a big one. Belgium, Andorra, Spain, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador. United States is number 10. Where's Sweden? 17. Who's above Sweden? You've got Italy, UK, United States, Spain, Belgium, you know, in Europe. So these are, you know, so to say that Sweden is a big disaster, France is right next to Sweden. And France will most likely catch up if Sweden stays the way that they are. I would imagine Sweden will see an uptick in deaths a bit. I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Sweden seems to be doing just stellar, Anthony. I don't know, maybe it was just the mask that they needed, or
that's what happens, you know, when you've got
they just didn't have that much travel in and out the country or whatever. Maybe they didn't have too many carriers, but yeah, man, Sweden is doing pretty solid. You know, I think maybe Trump just fucked up at the beginning. If he had just sent out masks and let the postal or UPS do what they were gonna do and dish out masks to everyone like they were gonna, I think this whole thing probably could have been a lot fucking better. Maybe America's numbers will be similar to Sweden, or at least the trend will be similar to Sweden. But I think Trump fucked up ultimately, and here we are.
Vulnerable populations, and we don't know yet if this virus, if we're able to get any sort of immunity from the virus, whether it be through herd. You know, herd immunity can be reached in two ways. You either reach it naturally by catching the virus, like I did with chickenpox. I'm immune to chickenpox now because I caught it, got over it, now I have immunity. Or you could get immunity through a vaccination, which now the young people don't ever get chickenpox because they're all vaccinated, so they've reached herd immunity through vaccination. Either way, those are the two ways to reach herd immunity, and we don't know yet if we can receive any sort of immunity.
Wow, scuffed. Regular flu cases dropping by 90%. Did she say that, or did you hear that somewhere? Because I missed it if she said that. Yeah, if regular flu cases just happen to drop like 90%, yeah, that's kind of suspect. Because it's like, well, are they just tacking on like flu deaths and attributing it to COVID? Yeah, man. If you could link like fucking article or some shit, that'd be sick. I didn't hear about that.
From this virus, whether it be through catching it or even through a vaccine. If you can't catch it and become immune, I don't think you can have a vaccine and become immune either. So ideally though, and there are some scientists that and they think that to say that.
Hold on, I just wanted to look at the chart.
Sweden is a big disaster.
One more time. Okay.
France is right next to Sweden. And France, despite whatever their strategy is, they seem to have a low spread throughout the region. And they think it might be because in Asia, they have a lot of coronaviruses that circulate around that we don't have in the Western world. And because of it, they have a natural level of immunity in their background. I think that is a big possibility. They do catch way more coronaviruses than we do. Therefore, they have maybe a natural immunity build up to it. And that is why they're not being hit hard with it, whereas the Western world is. Very, very possible. So Just kind of interesting. Now, also, I want to bring up while talking about this is that Dr. Fauci has said that it will be years before we go back to normal. So here's Dr. Fauci saying it may be years before America feels a semblance of normality again. This is an article from Newsweek saying Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, told a Melbourne, Australia audience on Wednesday that it could be years before Americans are able to resume their lives normally amid the novel coronavirus pandemic. Years. He says, I think it will be easily by the end of 2021 and perhaps into the next year before we start having some semblance of normality, Fauci said. If normal means you can get people in the theater without worrying about what we call congregate setting superinfections, if we can get restaurants to open almost at full capacity, he added. So Fauci went on to explain that opening up the economy and maintaining public health safety is a fine line to walk. He said he believes a worldwide vaccine will be available within the next few months. They don't know. And even then, the vaccines, and I'm going to go deeper into this in a different time, looking into it, because I've seen some preliminary stuff, but I need to do more research. It looked from what I saw just at first glance that the vaccines that they're talking about are not real vaccines. What they're developing is that they're essentially going to be like a flu shot, where it might help you, it might not. It might make you sick, even maybe more sick than the flu would make you. And you could get the shot and you could still end up with COVID, that it's kind of a hit or miss. It's not really a vaccine in the way chickenpox vaccine or measles vaccine. You know, it's not that kind of vaccine, but it's one that still a huge percentage of people still will end up with the virus even after taking the vaccine. So-called vaccine. So really it would be more of it would lessen the impact of the virus, but not make it go away. That's what I was reading. But again, I have to do some more research on that, look deeper into that, and I will for a later date. So, look, bottom line is, like I said at the beginning of this, we are usually only a few short weeks away from whatever Europe does. It largely will depend on which state in the union you are living in. If you are under a Republican governor, such as Ron DeSantis in Florida, you're probably not likely to go into a lockdown. But if you're living here in the state of California, like I am with Governor Newsom, the chances of a lockdown are very, very high. So get your toilet paper. I think that's the moral of the story.
Shit, I just lost my fucking blunt, Roach. Anyway, shit, I'm a little tired here. Fuck, I was gonna watch the new Mandalorian with my cuzzo. So I'm gonna wrap this thing on up. Think we did pretty good. Learned a decent amount about capitalism and all that shit and communism. I guess this is the part where I guess we take our votes. So we'll start in the chat, man. What's the verdict here? Is capitalism, is it perfect, or is it just so-so? Is it perfect, or is it slightly imperfect? Just let me know in the chat. And based upon the consensus, that will be my new worldview that I adopt henceforth for all eternity. Just based on democracy here. Let me see. We got one for so-so. Anthony Ray says it's so-so as fuck. All right. Okay. It's one for so-so. Gray Walker. Capitalism can be abused. It needs tweaking. So-so. Huh. We got two for so-so. Interesting. All right. Let me see. While I'm waiting for the other votes to come in, put on some Sean Atwood. Upstate Raiders. It needs evolution. If it needs evolution, well, obviously that means you must think it's perfect. All right, so one for perfect, two for so-so. I'm just kidding. All right, so that's three for so-so. It's not looking good for capitalism. I think it's losing its divine perfection. Uh-oh. Implicate world order. Fake and gay. Fake and gay. I'm gonna take a fucking shot in the dark and assume that's gonna align more with the so-sos, that side of the spectrum. So it's not looking good at all for capitalism. Oh shit, thought I was gonna leave this stream a hardcore capitalist, man, but shit, I might still be a commie by the end of this thing. God damn.
Sean Atwood here, London-based author and activist. More Epstein videos. We're going to be over 400 videos now on Epstein on this channel. What we've got here is...
Y'all just fucking with you, Upstate. I didn't think you thought it was perfect. Oh well.
I've mentioned about the complexity of this case, whereby girls, kids, teenagers are brought in, groomed into this trafficking operation, and then some of them become recruiters. So what does the prosecutor...
Alright, so we're not gonna watch this. This is the teaser for Sean Atwood. I highly recommend you subscribe to Sean if you're not already. He gets into some pretty deep shit. But he totally turned me on to the whole Epstein scandal and all that. So he was ahead of it there. So go ahead. And yeah, I'll just leave you guys with that. And yeah, man, I'm just tired of shit. And wrap this up. Read this. Grey Walker says communism works well on small scale, like a commune, but as a national system would require authoritarian oversight. Maybe that very well may be, because you are putting a lot of power in the government, but it seems like it kind of balances out because you're putting more financial power into the hands of the people, right? So yeah, the government has more responsibilities, but the people, they've got more influence and power and say, right? Because they'd be controlling the means of distribution and the means of production. So that's kind of, that's what I think. That's what I think you have to keep in mind when I'm talking about the balances of power between communism and capitalism. Because right now, in capitalism, the government can have a lot of power, it can have no power. And ultimately, in the end, the end result's always the same, just lots of power and influence being divided, between just a relatively few amount of people. With communism, it seems like you'd have a better shake and distribution, and a more objective and a level, just a level running of the country, But hey, I'm no expert. But yeah, I'll catch you cool kids later. Fucking tired of shit. I'm gonna wake this fool up, see if he's still down to watch that show after I light up this bowl. So take it easy. And say no to drugs and shit. Peace.